We're in the intro, standby.
Mm.
30 seconds out. $20. Thank you. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Good morning, and welcome to the Wednesday, June 22 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I am Nicole Gibbs, Community Relations Specialist. Sedgwick County Environmental Resources and Household Hazardous Waste will host a remote collection event this Saturday, June 25, from 9 to 1 at the Hayesville Municipal Building parking lot. For more information, please visit the Sedgwick County website. At this time, I'd like to invite Stephanie Birmingham up to give you an update on Recovery Connect.
Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm actually going to start with an update on COVID vaccinations because we do have some good news. You've probably heard the wait is over. Kids now under 5 can get vaccinated. KDHE late Monday afternoon endorsed the use of a Pfizer vaccine for children 6 months to 4 years and a Moderna vaccine for kids 6 months to 5 years. We are encouraging families, I know they've been eager to get this, they can contact their pediatrician or their own provider or clinic to set up those appointments. The vaccine is not actually here yet. We couldn't order it until that approval was given. We are expecting our shipment to arrive to the health department later this week, probably Friday, and we will be supplying those vaccines to providers who have ordered it after that. So it could be next week before your pediatrician actually has it. So if you could be patient just a few days, we hope every family will consider getting their child vaccinated. It protects them as well as everyone they come into contact with. And we know during summer there's lots of get-togethers, family reunions, trips, so it's really important. Now, for children who do not have insurance, they can get vaccinated at our West Central Clinic at 2716 West Central. That is for children who are in Medicaid, CanCare, or the CHIP program. Now, we've already received questions, what if my pediatrician is not going to offer the vaccine? There is a website you can go to. It's www.covid.gov. You can put in your zip code and find a provider near you who is offering the vaccine. And if we find there is a real need to fill this gap, people who have insurance but their provider is not providing that vaccine, the health department is considering holding a special vaccination clinic, so we'll be sure to let you know about that. I want to clarify these tender age vaccinations, as they're called, are not going to be offered through our mobile vaccine clinics. Those are for ages 5 and up. We are still giving those $50 gift cards for first doses and booster shots at most of our mobile clinics, and that's because we're still trying to boost those vaccination rates. Right now, 54% of the population in Sedgwick County is considered fully vaccinated. 55% of Kansans are fully vaccinated, and that compares nationally to 67%. So we really still have a lot of work to do. At these vaccine clinics, we are also promoting Recovery Connect. That's our free county program helping folks who are still struggling financially after the pandemic. We are cross-collaborating with the health department. If a Recovery Connect person cannot actually be at these events, the health department team is handing out flyers. We've also had some good television coverage. We actually have a live interview this Friday on KSN about Recovery Connect. So we're really hoping to get the word out. Again, lots of examples of money that is available that people may not realize is out there. College students, for example, they have extended that pause on loan repayments. It automatically suspends the principal and interest payments through August 31st, and it stops collection on defaulted loans. So that's a good deal for college students. And COVID money is also helping the summer food service program expand the number of sites, including here in Kansas, that are serving free breakfast and lunch to all kids ages 1 to 18. You don't have to show any kind of proof of income. You just show up. Kids can also get a to-go meal for the next day. And COVID money is being used to increase the reimbursement rate to school districts because we all know the price of food has gone up. And with more kids needing that food, it's going to be costly to our school districts. So just a couple examples. We have many resources out there. We never want people to assume that the money's gone or maybe they don't qualify. Call Recovery Connect at 316-978-6737 or go to their website and one of our navigators will talk to you and try to connect you to the resources that help your specific situation. Any questions?
Commissioner Meitzner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, maybe my colleagues could help. We all get news feeds. Did I see something where now child babysitting services can get a bonus, or either they get a bonus or the parents?
Yes, and I'm planning to present on that as well. It just came out yesterday. My understanding is that if you work for a child care provider, each worker is eligible for up to $2,500. So that's a great deal.
Okay, yeah. So let's make sure Recovery Connect has that info.
Exactly.
All right, because that seemed to be one of the top reasons why people were struggling was child care.
We are hearing
services.
from a lot of providers
Okay.
and also families struggling to pay for child care.
Thank you.
Thank you. And earlier this week, Manager Stoltz forwarded an email to all of the commissioners about COVID in the hospitals. Mm-hmm. And he received an email from Dr. Antonios from Via Christi. They were down near zero not too long ago. The numbers are climbing, as I recall correctly. About 25 are now in COVID. They do have one on ventilator at this time. So the thing I didn't pick up was how many of those that are in there have been vaccinated, so I'm not sure how that's going. Mm-hmm. But again, there's boosters available also for those that have gotten the shot. So it looks like over time, maybe the vaccination wears off a little bit. So if you have gotten the initial shot, make sure that you get the booster so that you stay safe and don't end up in the hospital like 24 of our fellow citizens have. So.
That's right. COVID is slowly increasing, and we really want to get folks vaccinated now in case there is another surge, so they are protected.
Okay. I don't see anything else. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for continuing to share these important updates. As a reminder, there are some Sedgwick County departments that are in the process of moving to 100 North Broadway Street, also known as the Ruffin Building. At this time, we want to remind you that with any move or change of address, no matter if it is personal or a business, there is a delay in mail from the post office. We are aware of this, and we are continuing to make sure that mail is getting to the departments that have moved, and also working with the post office for this information. But citizens, if you have questions about a piece of mail that you sent to one of our departments, please don't hesitate to call them and find out if they have what you sent them. Commissioners, looking at today's agenda, there will be a resignation and several appointments for you to consider for various boards, a conditional use to permit outdoor shooting in RV campground, a resolution to set a public hearing for an unsafe structure, a consideration of 2 grants for the Regional Forensic Science Center, a consideration of compensation plans and a mid-year general pay adjustment, and a report from the Board of Bids and Contracts meeting. With that, Chairman, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. One thing about the move that you briefed us on briefly is that the new location for our boardroom isn't ready yet because of backlog on trying to get IT with all of the things in order for us to be able to transmit this broadcast and for us to be able to see things like on the screen and so forth. So we're going to continue to work out of this room until everything is settled over in the Ruffin building. Once we move over there, the board meetings will be held down in the lower level. There's an auditorium down there that seats about 200 people, so we'll have plenty of room for everyone. But we can't move until we're able to broadcast these meetings. So I want everybody to know, keep coming to this building in the future until we let you know that we're completely moved over there. So that move that you briefed isn't final. A lot of our offices are already over there. Some more will be moving this week and next week. And so if you're looking for staff, you may need to go over to 100 North Broadway. If you're looking to come to a board meeting, please continue to come here. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That's exactly right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, Nicole. I want to welcome everyone that's in the audience today and those that are joining us online and on TV. With that, I'll call the meeting to order for Wednesday, June the 22nd, 2022. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Invocation to be led by Lucas Chavez, Life Church, West Wichita. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Good morning. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for this great city that we get to be a part of. Thank you for this community of people that many of us you've called to lead in some form or fashion, God. And so I thank you. I really believe that we live in one of the greatest cities in the country. Father, I thank you for each and every one of these commissioners and all the leaders in this room. God, I pray that you would bless them and give them wisdom and insight to know how to lead. It says in your word, God, that you set up kings and you tear them down. And so I really believe that they're all placed in leadership on purpose, God, that they would not be there without you wanting them to be there. And as someone in a place of leadership, God, I know often I can, if I'm being honest, I can relate a lot more to the Israelites wandering in the desert than I can to David feeding the Goliath. And so I pray for wisdom for them, God. Pray that you would give them insight and wisdom on how to know how to lead, God. I pray that you would bless them both personally and professionally, Jesus. I pray that we would always look to the greatest example of leadership that you ever gave us, and that is your Son, Jesus Christ, God. I pray that we would model his leadership, his behaviors, Jesus, his humble confidence, his servant leadership, his focus on the mission, but also on stopping and focusing on the individual. God, I pray that you would bless them again. God, help this meeting to be effective and productive, God, and I pray that we would ultimately just look to you in all things that we do. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor Sved, thank you very much. We appreciate the invitation. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Lopez.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
Commissioners, we did receive one online, but it's requesting to be able to speak in July, so I don't see any need to make a motion on that one that we received online. We do have a number of people that are signed up in person today. Now, several of them have signed up on conditional use. Those that would like to speak during the actual agenda portion of that, I will give an opportunity. If you need to leave for some reason, I will go through and check with you on that. So the first one I want to check with is on the conditional use. Audrey Hefflinger, do you want to speak during the agenda? Okay. Let's see. Jack Heffling, do you want to speak during the agenda? Okay. Terry Summers, Mayor. Oh, I apologize. I normally recognize any elected officials, and I want to recognize Mayor Terry Summers from Mount Hope. Thank you for being here today. Tyler Graves, do you want to speak during the agenda item?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Randy Deck, do you want to speak during the agenda item?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Then we'll go to, we have several people signed up to speak on sustainability, and we'll take care of that agenda item next. Holger Meyer,
Yes.
would you like to approach the podium, state your name for the record, and you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Holger Meyer. I'm a professor of physics at Wichita State University. Also, of course, here I speak for myself and not for Wichita State. I live at 2712 North Beacon Hill Court, close to Oliver and 29th Street. As you may know, as I am sure some of you know, the city of Wichita has recently formed a Sustainability Integration Board, and that board has started its work, has formed several subcommittees that are looking at various issues to make city operations more sustainable and to recommend measures to help citizens in Wichita to live more sustainably. We think that the county could play an important role in also forming a sustainability board, as many of the issues the city is addressing right now, starting to address right now, go beyond Wichita city limits. Public transportation impacts not just those inside Wichita, but those in the county. I'm an avid cyclist. Cycling paths should not end at the city boundary, and so on. The list goes on. Every time you are asked to do something new, of course, the first thing that comes into your mind is the dollar signs that go with that. But importantly, a sustainability board can be cost neutral, in fact, cost positive in many of the things that happen. I'm asking everybody to stop being a fossil fool, and because it is foolish to keep burning, emitting carbon dioxide when there's better means that exist, when technology has advanced to where more comfortably and with less cost over the life cycle, we can continue operations in a more comfortable way, in a more sustainable way, in a way that causes less climate change to happen. I would ask you to investigate forming a county sustainability board to make recommendations on sustainable operations for the county operations itself. Those are things like buildings that have large south-facing windows. They get very hot even with the AC running at max capacity. Simple measures such as shading the windows don't just reduce air conditioning bills, but also make the building a more pleasant environment and are proven to increase worker productivity and welfare inside those buildings. So there are some very simple measures, but it goes way beyond that. Anything the county does can be examined for its environmental and climate impact, and recommendations be developed. Furthermore, there may be programs directly helping Sedgwick County residents to live more sustainably, to get off fossil fuels, and to transition into the future renewable energy economy. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I don't see any questions at this time. I appreciate your time. The next speaker is Jane Burns. State your name for the record, although we all know you, but state your name for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jane Burns, and I live in District 1. This request today is not about politics or organizations. It's a grassroots effort, as was the effort for the Wichita Sustainability Board last year, which after 8 months of asking, approved their Sustainability Board by 7-0. We urge you today to acknowledge and mitigate the climate warming future of our planet and for our grandchildren. Today we are all urging you to establish a sustainability board for the county to mitigate our climate emergency. Climate warming is a giant issue. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is 195 member states within the United Nations. This April, it produced its starkest warning ever of major, inevitable, and irreversible climate changes that we have just 5 years to mitigate. Permit me to digress to my personal motives. I brought small grandchildren to my first WAMPO, WAMPO, Wichita Area Municipal Planning Organization, when they were little, and now those kids are teens. Some of you know from the city, the county, WAMPO, and the state of Kansas that I've advocated for active transportation and alternative transportation, but the momentum has always been for very expensive new highways. I have several motivations. As a health professional, I know wellness, physical and mental, is for defeating obesity, most type 2 diabetes and heart disease, some depression, and other disabilities that mushroom the cost of health care. You are the County Board of Health. And should promote, public health should promote that physical activity, safe physical activity, will avoid some very costly health care diseases and conditions. My mindset, however, eventually morphed to safety because both those seniors and children and disabled outside a car have far higher percentages of severe injuries and deaths. Underlying all my pleas, so that's my third motivation, has been environmental. Since fossil-fueled transportation generates at least 27% of our planet's air crisis. In this attractive budget summary, so nice, I don't see where highways are in county funds. I think of that as the elephant in the room. Transportation decision makers automatically fund more and more new highways for cars and especially for big freight trucks way in the future. I don't know how much money is is contributed by the county for that $225 million couple of miles of East Kellogg that many Wichitans and Sedgwick counties will never use. I don't know how much money the county's contributing, but when $225 million go pretty far in for railroads that Pete used to like, for the seniors going to church and groceries and other safe alternate transportation choices. So, that do not pollute. In summary, we're asking today for a county sustainability board, either separate from or combined with Wichita's, with real responsibility and support. I know the county has been doing some great work toward the environment. Isn't it time to acknowledge and promote and fund solutions such as trees, waste reduction, and air quality? Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz first.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate your energy and passion for this. When I took office in 2019, at the end of the first year, we talked about implementing solar panels. And we did a study about the return on investment for what solar panels would do for our community. And we had, and I'm looking at the PowerPoint right now, we had a return on investment of about 14 years. The system would pay for itself. And that led to us, we didn't get the solar panels passed, but the commission did agree to about $250,000 roughly for an energy audit. And with that came a few things. And most notably is the agreement with Evergy to source 5,000 kilowatts, approximately 79% of the county's electrical consumption from the Ponderosa wind farm. So we have reduced our electrical costs. In our first year, we saved $55,164, and as of last week, our year-to-date savings is $71,000. So the actions that I took in 2019 to push this board to start talking about sustainability has returned some savings for this county. Now, I will say that creating another board, I believe that we should look into creating a county-wide board that encompasses the city and all of our other cities as well. And that's something that we have been talking about for a while. So I appreciate you being here today to bring this up. And I look forward to working with colleagues both here and with the other 20 cities to see what we can do as a county-wide initiative so that we can see some of these returns that we have. The numbers don't lie.
Perfect.
So I'm excited that I was able to share this today. And I'm excited that you're here to discuss this, because when I first took office, sustainability wasn't even a word that we talked about. So here we are a little bit later and bringing it up again. So appreciate you being here. Thank you. I think we have one more speaker maybe on this.
Well, I
board.
do want to point out that we've got to do that quickly. We've
Sure.
got 5 years. I really appreciate your solar array thought. May's Schools has provided a wonderful example of capturing solar as well as wind. Thank you. Are there more questions?
Well, thank you, Jane. Did the city place it under the Metropolitan Area Planning Department?
No.
It looks to me like if there was going to be any kind of joint consideration, that it ought to be under the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. They're the ones that develop the comprehensive plan that looks at how that we're moving towards the future. They develop all the plans, and it is a joint plan.
And that would be wise for sure. At this point, it's just starting. It's not even fully staffed. It's a large board, 14 people, and all members have not yet been appointed. So it's only revving up. Approved last September, but still in the preparation phase. And did I mention we have 5 years to mitigate
We understand
climate
that.
change?
All right, thank you,
I
Jane.
said that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Kyle Bokamp from Derby. Please state your name for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Kyle Beecham, and I do live in Derby, 901 North Lakeview Drive. I'm a science teacher. I've been teaching science for 6 years. I am also here as an environmentalist. Let me clear the record and say I don't represent my school, of course, as a science teacher. I'm just saying I have some subtle amount of scientific literacy and alarm about the state of our environment. I'm also here as a father, and I rode my bike here, so that helps to explain my appearance, hopefully. But I see that I'm underdressed, and next time I'll dress a little nicer. I won't take too much of your time, but thank you for allowing me to get up here. I am among the group that's here to ask you for at least investigating the possibility of implementing a county-wide sustainability board. As a Derby resident, I admire and envy Wichita's Sustainability Implementation Board, but it won't benefit me unless the broader metro area is included. And I think the county has the power to, the county's bigger and includes more of those metro area cities like Derby and Andover and, well, no, sorry, not Andover. Anyways. I was nearly killed by a car back in December as I was bike commuting from my home to my job. And I like to, toddle my son around town with our bikes, and he's learned how to ride a bike now, and so I can kind of guide him to the coffee shop. He shouldn't have too much caffeine, but he really likes it. And to the bowling alley and around town. But I hope that when he's my age, that he isn't, fighting the fight that I have to go through bike commuting around. And so among the sustainability measures that I would hope this board would pursue, high on my list, personal priorities, is alternative and active transportation. That doesn't just go for bicyclists and like Holger and myself. That goes for people that use e-bikes that would allow them to get, not just around one city, but intercity travel much more easily. The e-bikes have really become pretty good. All sorts of cool gadgets now. There's one-wheel things and electric scooters and electric skateboards and all sorts of cool stuff that's more sustainable and arguably much safer and healthier than cars. And I would like to also add that, money saved is money earned. And I think that a lot of these things are cheaper. Maybe by some metrics, you don't see that money in an economic analysis, but it's still there. And those people that are able to save the money on less efficient and more expensive kinds of transportation like cars are to benefit in healthcare savings and local economy stimulation if we prioritize that active and alternative transportation instead of more conventional, large highways and such things. That's all I have to say. If you have any comments or questions, I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, I'll go sit.
Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to say, first of all, thank you for being here. I also live in Derby, so appreciate you taking time to come up and visit us today. I'm trying to understand, we have 3 speakers so far, said very similar things. I'm just curious, is it your viewpoint that the Board of County Commissioners has a role to play in terms of what type of transportation people choose? First, you mentioned skateboards, you mentioned scooters, you mentioned one-wheel
Only
devices
insofar as infrastructure building is and its design is done. After that, of course, it should be up to people whether I want to skateboard or ride a one-wheel or a bicycle. Maybe there needs to be regulation that I can't use an e-bike that goes 40 miles an hour on a pedestrian path because they exist. But does that help at all?
I'm just trying to figure out, so, because our infrastructure primarily is in the unincorporated, so we do partner with cities on some projects, but lots of cities have sidewalks and cities have parks. The county doesn't really do very much in terms of sidewalks because there's just not a lot of people walking along the roads that we tend to maintain out in the county. So, if we were to shift funding from streets and infrastructure of street infrastructure to sidewalks and thinking people would choose those things, I think we're a long ways from that today. We barely have enough money to maintain the roads we have today, and again, to add sidewalks in places where people might go, if that's the role you're suggesting, that's certainly it's an interesting topic, I suppose. But I'm wondering if the city's talking about, are they trying to, they incentivize, for example, people to buy new plumbing fixtures to save on water, for example. They incentivize them with money. Okay, is there some vision that there's going to be some type of incentive to get people to move away from fossil fuels to electric transportation? Is that the viewpoint of these speakers today? I'm just curious as to what your vision is for the Board of County Commissioners. What exactly are you asking us to do, besides having a board?
Besides having the board, I would like to see, this is my personal flair on what the board should do, right? I would like to see, what you just said, there's not the money for, and I understand. But a way to get around longer distances, not just around a city, but between cities, like for me to get from Derby to Wichita, right, and other people in the larger metro area to get around longer distances in a safe way, so that they're not almost killed by cars on county highways. Within city limits, right, which this may not be your issue, but within city limits, you can have greenways. Have any of you heard of greenways? Okay, so mostly the kinds of cities you would expect, Portland and I think Chicago and Atlanta and Austin maybe, have implemented greenways, and basically it's allocating some portion of streets that exist to be more pedestrian focused, and so they allow parking on both sides of the street to kind of create this sense of restriction to drivers going fast. They'll plant trees, set in recycling receptacles and things like that. At the county level, I don't know what the answer is to your question, like how do we incentivize this or
Incentives are typically how you get people to do, if you want to change behavior. Incentives, whether it be tax incentives or whatever it would be, typically is how you get people to change what they do naturally. I have a number of friends who just did the bike across Kansas last week, and they went 520 miles across our state. They used mostly state and county infrastructure to do that. We built a 5-mile long sidewalk, 10 feet wide, from Derby to the county limit. Actually, I think it actually goes on into Rose Hill, I believe. But that 10-foot wide sidewalk, the bicyclists won't use it. They go on 63rd Street. So
I use it myself up until it ends. It does not continue after that. It turns into somebody's ditch. So then I get on 63rd Street. But yeah, more stuff like that is exactly what I want to see, and I realize it costs money.
We talked about changing that from a 4-lane to a 3-lane road, simply to give a space on the road for bicyclists to travel on. The biggest opponent to that was the bicyclists. I was shocked. So the fact of the matter is, we have people who are very, very dedicated to bicycling, and they want to take the same space that cars will take. And that's really their. Again, I'm probably generalizing in broad brush discussion here, but
sure.
Generally speaking, they want to take the same space that a car would take, and they will want to be right in the lane. And so I've discovered that as a commissioner. I thought if you give them a safe space, they would like that. Actually, I found that they were very opposed to the idea. So it's a very perplexing discussion.
Sure.
At the end of the day, I'm not sure the BOCC has a lot of role to play here, but
okay.
Again, creation of a board is one thing we can talk about, but certainly.
Yeah, and you've had an opportunity to
But
speak.
certainly, the idea of effectively changing the natural choices of people is not something that's easy to do here.
Can I make one last remark? Yeah. So the John Forrester type, vehicular cyclists, I think, are on the out. We've seen in places where they have put in these greenways. This is a little different, right? But it still serves the point that I'm trying to make. People will go out of their way to use the greenways. Like bicyclists commuting will go out of their way to use the greenway because they feel safer. And I think that will be true. I think it's already true. I went out of my way for a while after I was almost killed by the car. I went 8 miles out of my way each day, round trip, to use that sidewalk you just talked about, the 10-foot wide one off of 63rd. I think, if we make them so that they're not an inferior choice and cyclists aren't like, I have a right to this road, the sidewalk is full of cracks and stuff, if we give them a good option, I think they'll use it. So I encourage you to look at that in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to answer them. When I'm thinking about what a board could look like for Sedgwick County, are you wanting participation, like members from the other cities to be on this board? Are you wanting this to be appointed by us, or what does that composition look like?
Oh, I don't know. I think it would be really nice to have somebody from every city, but then, it's not necessarily.
You both had an opportunity to speak. Let the
I thought I heard Sarah ask for.
Please have a seat.
other people.
So I guess my concern, and I just want to be honest with my concern here, is that the county, we're responsible for the areas that aren't in the cities, right? And so with cities having home rule, we can recommend stuff to cities, but we can't force cities to do anything. So I don't know if this is something that the county can really help lead, because we can't push that onto cities. But I do think that if you guys haven't talked to the Sedgwick County Association of Cities, that might be a really good space to have this conversation, because then you'll have city electeds from all over Sedgwick County that are already a part of that group. And that's where I would go with this recommendation, just because that might be the easiest way to get in front of all those cities and see if they wanted to be a part of it. Because again, we can't force them to do anything with them having home rule. But we used to have an internal sustainability board at the county. Is that correct? So what would that look like to bring something like that back? And do we know how long it's been since we've had anything like that?
I know we had one, and I think it's probably been at least 5 or 6 years since we have not. I would want to go back, look historically at what that board was and all about, and bring it back to the commission for consideration.
Okay, could we just maybe get some information on that and just see maybe what it could look like to do something like that again? But that's what I would recommend, is going to the Sedgwick County Association of Cities and really getting in front of those organizations that would have more of an impact than what I think we could in the unincorporated spaces of Sedgwick County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Lopez that we don't have authority within other cities. We only have it in the unincorporated areas. But we do have a metropolitan area planning department that is joint Wichita and Sedgwick County that may be able to look at this. But if you're wanting to go into other metropolitan areas, you're going to have to go to some place like Sedgwick County Association of Cities, because we do not have authority in those areas. Commissioner Cruz.
So Kyle, interestingly that you bring up roads, because we have, and I'm glad that Jim Weber is here, because the last time we had this conversation about roads and bridges that we have in Sedgwick County is they last for, last time Jim said 75 years. That's the plan to get these roads that we build and design. So when we think about in 75 years, what is cycling going to look like? What is the future of transportation going to look like? We don't know. So building in sidewalks and things like that for people to utilize, we should start thinking about that, because we're building for the future. And so to answer your question about roads, I think we do have a responsibility to think about how our design needs to change to be more sustainable and be more friendly to pedestrians and people, rather than only building for cars. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 75 years is a long time out, and bikes haven't changed that much maybe in the past 75 years, but I think cars are going to be interesting in 75 years if they still exist as we know them today.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Just a final question. I want to ask just you, Kyle. Is there support for taxation for infrastructure for bicyclists, from bicyclists? Do they support paying money to create that infrastructure to government?
I can't speak to that. I would say yes for myself. I would like to be exempted from paying the road tax. If I could pay for the bike infrastructure instead, I know that's probably a long shot.
Most of our infrastructure is paid for by fuel tax on gasoline.
So that's what I mean.
So again, if you're not buying gasoline, you're not paying that tax. But if you are on the roads, I mean, there is a discussion about electric vehicles who are not, how to tax them because they're using infrastructure they're not paying for. And bicyclists are very similar. They want infrastructure, but there's I can't even imagine a support from that group that they would say support a bicycle tax. And so I just throw that out there as a question because someone has to pay for that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. We will move on forward with the rest of the meeting, but I'd make a motion that we receive and file public comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call a roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, regular meeting minutes of May 18th, 2022.
Thank you. Commissioners, everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from May 18th and June 1st. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call a roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Appointments. Item C, accept the resignation of Jim DINKEL from the Sedgwick County Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Board.
Mr. Papoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Poon, County Councilor. First item C, is the resignation of Mr. DINKEL from the Sedgwick County Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Board. From your backup, it shows that he's going to be doing some traveling and not be available. And this is Commissioner Lopez's appointment. Ask that you approve his resignation from the board.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank Jim for his service on this board. I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'll just make a motion that we accept his resignation.
I'll second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call a roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item D, resolution appointing Joe Norton to the Sedgwick County Public Building Commission.
Mr. Papoon.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Poon again. Items D and E can be handled together if it suits the commission. Item D is the appointment of Joe Norton on the recommendation of Commissioner Meitzner to the Public Building Commission. You probably all know Joe. He's a longtime bond counsel for Sedgwick County and appreciate him volunteering to be on this board. And item E is Commissioner Lopez's appointment to the same board, Public Building Commission, and she is appointing Rosie Masadi. Both of the resolutions are in proper form, and ask that you approve the resolutions.
Thank you. I'll start with Commissioner Meitzner and then go to Commissioner Lopez.
Well, thank you. I appreciate, Joe, you're willing to serve, and I will make a motion to approve Joe Norton for this position.
I'll second for Joe and Rosie.
Oh, and Rosie also. My motion is for Joe and Rosie.
Very good. We have a motion and a second for items Delta and Echo. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call a roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And we have Joe here.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Sedgwick County Public Building Commission, so help me God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Joe, you'd like to say anything?
Oh, well, it's good to be back. It's been a while since I retired, and first time I've been here since then. I appreciate the confidence in the commission to appointing me to this position. We'll do my best to fulfill your obligations and duties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And thank you, Mr. Clerk, for swearing him in. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item F, resolution appointing Thomas Montiel to the Sedgwick County District 2 Citizens Advisory Board.
Mr. Papoon.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Lopez's appointment to her Citizens Advisory Board. She is recommending the appointment of Thomas Montiel. We have a resolution appointing Mr. Montiel, and it's in proper form, and ask you to approve the resolution.
Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. Thomas is not here today, but I want to just say how much I appreciate his willingness. He applied the first go-around when we set this board up, and when it was full, was willing to step in again at this point. So I really appreciate Thomas, and I'll move that we approve the resolution appointing him to the Citizens Advisory Board for District 2.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call a roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And he's not here, so we'll go on to item golf.
Item G, resolution appointing Larry Justice to the Sedgwick County Riverside Township trustee position.
Thank you, Mr. Boone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item G is the appointment of Mr. Justice as the Riverside Township trustee. This vacancy has occurred because of the passing of Dale Kuhn. who was originally in this position. Riverside Township, I think, covers both Commissioner Howell and Commissioner Cruz's district, and I think it's upon the recommendation of both commissioners that Mr. Justice be appointed as the new county township trustee. This is all provided by Kansas statute when there is such a vacancy, so we'd ask that you approve the resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell, I'll start with, and
Yeah.
we'll go Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to say I rarely catch Mike Capoon in a misspeak, but yes, Commissioner Lopez and I share this district. So, and anyway, it's districts 2 and 5. And I want to say, number one, I want to say Commissioner Lopez and I did work together to come up with a plan on how to do this, and I want to be very, very fair and open, have an open process. It's easy just to appoint somebody that you know, but I don't think it's fair to the electors of the township to have someone selected that happens to be a friend or someone that I happen to know. So I wanted to open this up to people I don't know, and so I followed a process. It kind of created a process. I sent out these cards to every voting household. Everybody registered to vote. Every household received one of these in that district. I sent out 1,228 of these postcards soliciting for interest in this position. I received 12 people who were interested in taking this position. And I worked with the Riverside Township, other 2 officers of the township, the clerk and the treasurer. And one at a time, we interviewed the candidates and took notes and compared our notes later on, and we all agree that Larry Justice is our best choice for this position. So I want to say, number one, thank you to Dale Kuhn. He served for a very long time, and the township's in tremendous shape. He did a really, really great job, and he'll be sorely missed. There is again unexpired term of Mr. Kuhn that Mr. Justice will be taking that position for that time, and we'll see what the future holds. But I do want to say that we did follow a process, and Commissioner Lopez and I worked together on this, and the township trustees, the other officers, were involved in this as well. So I'm very confident we have the right person for this job. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion. We would appoint Larry Justice to fulfill the unexpired term for the Riverside Township trustee position.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez.
No, I'll second that, but I also just want to thank Larry for stepping up into this role, and I really let Commissioner Howell take the lead on this because this is primarily in his district. I have a little bit in my district, so I appreciate all the work that went into this, and I think we have the right person, so thank you again.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you. Congratulations. And our clerk will swear you in.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Riverside Township Trustee, so help me God.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations. Would you like to say anything?
That's an open-ended question, since I'm a retired minister. But anyway, I appreciate it very, very much. I'll do the best job I can for the next 2.5 years, and like Commissioner Howell said, we'll see what happens afterwards and whether I can still live with my wife at that time. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it and working with Tim. Tim is here with us, and we'll do what we can to make sure that Riverside Township continues on and continues to do good work. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Congratulations. Hey, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item H, resolution appointing Sedgwick County Register of Deeds Tonya Buckingham to the Sedgwick County Grievance Board in the elected official position.
Mr. Papoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By resolution, the county has a 3-person grievance board made up of an employee representative, department head representative, and an elected official representative. This board hears certain employment action grievances on behalf of county employees. We can take item H, I, and J together. Try to get this one right. The elected official recommendation is for Tonya Buckingham, our Register of Deeds, to be the appointment for the elected official position. Item I is appointing Kelly Arnold, County Clerk, as the as the alternate position. I should also mention each of the three positions have an alternate position as well in case they can't serve. So we have Tonya Buckingham, Kelly Arnold is the alternate, and the or the department head representative that's being recommended today is Julie Stimson by the Board of County Commissioners for that position. All three of the resolutions are in proper form, and ask that you approve the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Poon. I appreciate the explanation. I move that we approve items Hotel, India, and Juliet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And are you going to swear yourself in? No.
Yes, I will actually swear myself in later. All right. I do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Sedgwick County Grievance Board Department Head, so help me God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Julie. You like to say anything?
No, I'm good.
You got a side. Okay. Well, Mr. Clerk, thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. Madam Clerk, next item.
New business, item K, CON 2022-00004, conditional use to permit outdoor shooting and RV campground on property zone RR Rural Residential, generally located on the west side of North 295th Street West and on the south side of K96 Highway.
Good morning, Scott. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, sir. So Scott Wadle from the Planning Department. This case is coming to you because it is an application for two conditional uses, one for recreational vehicle campground and the second one for outdoor recreation and entertainment, which includes a shooting range. This item is returning to you today after being sent from you to the Planning Commission for further consideration regarding additional information on possible environmental impacts and the applicant's plan for best management practices. I'll provide a brief overview, a little bit of the history, and then I'll go over some of the images with you. So in terms of the property, it's located approximately a half-mile west of the city of Mount Hope. You can see where it is here in relationship to K96 and 295th. The property is zoned rural residential and undeveloped. A major feature of the property are multiple pits that are on the site. It's my understanding these are borrow pits where soil was taken out during the construction of K96. The subject site is divided into two parcels by the Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad tracks, and you can see that cutting across the site diagonally. In terms of the application, as I mentioned, the applicants are applying for two conditional uses. The RV campground is proposed on the northern portion of the property, the north and east. Outdoor recreation and entertainment is proposed on the other portion. In terms of the RV, they anticipate about 6 RV sites on the property. The applicants are proposing to use the south and west portions of the property for a firearm shooting range, which is classified as outdoor recreation and entertainment, the Unified Zoning Code. The applicants propose to develop 3 firing ranges, shotgun with clay pigeons, pistol training area, and a rifle range. And I'll show you a graphic that illustrates their site plan for that. In terms of context, all of the surrounding properties are zoned rural residential. North of the subject site is K96 Highway and rights of way. South are agricultural lands and the cell tower with residences beyond the agricultural lands. West are agricultural lands and east are agricultural fields in an abandoned structure that appears to be a former railroad use. In terms of the history of this case, on March 7th, the CAB, the Citizens Advisory Board for District 3, considered the application. They recommended approval by a 6-2 vote, subject to the staff recommendation. No members of the public spoke in opposition at the public hearing. At this public meeting. On March 17th, public hearing for this case was held at the Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommended approval of the conditional uses by an 8-2 vote. The MAPC's recommendation differed from the CAB recommendation. The MAPC added a condition requiring the shooting range to adhere to hours of operation. Several members of the public spoke in opposition at this public hearing. The concerns generally regarded noise, safety of nearby residents, proximity of the proposed shooting range to the highway, and the city, and also the proximity to the city of Mount Hope, and possible effects on groundwater. Protest petitions representing more than 90% of the protest area were received, succeeds the state threshold of 20%, and therefore any vote to approve the application will require a supermajority of 4 of 5 votes. On May 4th, the Board of County Commissioners heard this case. Following comments and deliberations, the case was sent back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. Regarding additional information on possible environmental impacts from the proposed shooting range and the applicant's proposed best management practices. On May 19th, the MAPC, or Planning Commission, reconsidered the application and recommended approval of both conditional uses 11-0, subject to conditions which are detailed in the staff report that you received. During the meeting, the Planning Commission considered the possibility of environmental impacts from the proposed use, including the potential of lead contamination into the groundwater from lead shot and the best management practices proposed by the applicant. A revised site plan was submitted just in time for this Planning Commission case. Also, information from Environmental Resources staff was provided at this meeting. In addition, 2 members of the public spoke in opposition at that meeting, stating concerns again of contaminated groundwater and potential detrimental effects on quality of life. As part of their recommendation, the Planning Commission recommended 8 conditions, including 3 new ones. Those 3 are highlighted here in just a moment and in the staff report. The applicant shall submit a best practices plan and submit for review and approval by the Director of Sedgwick County Department of Environmental Resources prior to commencing operation of the shooting range. The second is that the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department will enforce testing and related results. And the third is that the applicant would provide a revised site plan to the Planning Department for review and approval prior to commencing the outdoor recreation entertainment use. On June 16th, this is after the second Planning Commission meeting, county staff confirmed with the Aqueous Beds manager and others that the bottom of the pits on the subject site do extend to and probably into the aquifer groundwater level. As a result, it is my understanding that property owners will either need to apply for a permit for the evaporation of water from the pits or to fill the pits, likely not entirely, but in order to help prevent exposure of the groundwater. And we have Environmental Resources staff here that can provide additional details on that. In terms of the actions, the recommended action is to adopt the finding of the MAPC, approve the conditional use request, and authorize the chairman to sign the prepared resolution. This would require 4 out of 5 votes. The alternative in this case is that you can deny the application by making alternative findings and override the MAPC recommendation. This would require a simple majority vote since this case is returning back to you from after being reconsidered by the MAPC. So with that, I will take you through some of the graphics. So here's the site plan. Here's the zoning map showing rural residential. Here is the future growth concept map from the comprehensive plan, again showing the relationship and proximity to the city of Mount Hope. Here is the original site plan that was proposed. This one showed the firing range for the shotguns located in one of the depressions or pits. This is a revised site plan that was provided to the MAPC prior to their reconsidering of the case. And one thing that has come up, and I just want to point out briefly, is the distances from the shotgun range, 5 stand, to the property boundary is approximately 400 feet. From, again, the 5 stand to the highway is approximately 600 feet. And from the 5 stand to the railroad is approximately 875 feet. Here is the map of the protest. You can see that it accounts for more than 90% of the protest area. Here is a map showing the rural water districts in the area, and there are none in this area of the county. Here is a map showing the distances radiating out from the subject site and also identifying residences in the area. You can see them located towards the south. Here is a new map that you did not see last time, and this is a LiDAR map showing the elevations. And one thing to point out is that the 5 stand would be located somewhere in this vicinity at the southern end, southwestern end of this pit, and then firing north And one of the BMPs, the best management practices, points out that there would be a berm provided for this one. And so there are some questions about how that would take place, to have a 20 to 25 foot berm with the height and elevation of the 5 stand. And that was something that just came up this morning in review of the case. Here's some images from the submitted by the applicant. The rifle range 5 stand, the lodge. Here are photos from the site. This is the cell tower to the south. Former railroad use to the east. Some of the fields around. This is looking at the property. This is on the property. Looking at the railroad, K96. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Before we go any further, I want to declare that I have had ex parte contact on this matter, which included personal conversations and telephone conversations. I have received information outside of today's hearing, and I think that it would be appropriate to disclose at this time, which was some documents that were hand-carried to each of the commissioners. So I will give all the commissioners an opportunity at this time if they've had ex parte. Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. I too have had those. I've had emails and the documents that were already mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
I have had ex parte communication, including emails and the document that was left in my chair this morning.
And Commissioner Howell.
Mr. Chairman, I received the document that was handed out, I guess, late yesterday, both electronically and physically. I have had no other ex parte communication on this since our last meeting on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Chairman. And I also have received various communications, both emails and hard copies, but I've not had any direct conversations with the applicant or the others that are against it.
Thank you. Each commissioner will maintain an open mind on this matter, and the decisions are based on the information and statements that are presented during this meeting. Thank you. I appreciate that. Scott, while you're up there, one of the, I think probably need Susan Erlingwine next, unless any commissioners have a question from Scott at this point. I don't see any. Susan?
Good morning, Commissioners. Susan Erlingwine, Director of Environmental Resources. When issues were brought up about groundwater contamination for this proposed site, I became involved once I found out about it and studied the area. It is a very porous sand underlying this area. It's permeable and yields a high amount of water. This is part of Groundwater Management District's 2 realm of the Equus beds. And if you're familiar with the Equus beds, it's where Wichita receives about half of their water supply. Now the groundwater flows from northwest to southeast in this area, so the water wells for the city of Wichita should not be affected by what happens at this site. But you do have people with private water wells, the city of Mount Hope, and agriculture wells drawing water from this area. So this is why the concerns were brought up about this area. I mentioned before that I thought the pits, because of their depth of 26 feet, would intersect the groundwater table. Groundwater Management District Number 2 sent staff out last Tuesday to determine the depth of the groundwater on a well that's on that property and determined that, yes, it would be intersecting the bottom of the pits. So because of that, you have a new issue that's been brought up, and that is when you have groundwater exposed to the surface, it requires permits from the Division of Water Resources for water appropriation because of evaporation. I've been through this with county properties. The Sedgwick County Zoo, Sedgwick County Park, Lake Afton, all have permits for water evaporation for the lakes. So this is a common occurrence when you have that exposed. So they would have to either get a permit from the Division of Water Resources for that evaporation, or work with Groundwater Management District Number 2 and whatever requirements they would have to bring the bottom of the pits up above the groundwater table. So it would be up to that agency to determine the amount of fill and the type. Would it be a combination of bentonite clay and sand or soil? But that's up to Groundwater Management District to determine how they would want to protect the groundwater in that area. So that is one step that has to be taken yet on this property. The applicants have been following the EPA guidelines on shooting ranges that are outdoors. Those guidelines, EPA worked with NRA and other shooting organizations. They stress that each site is different, as all BMP's best management practices need to be site-specific because no two sites are alike. They have a list of concerns that need to be addressed when you're developing your best management practices. The applicant has been looking at how frequently they would be digging lead out of the berms, how they would test soil for acidity, because the more acid water is or the soil, the faster that lead would dissolve. And then if they did determine it was an acidic soil, they would then apply the appropriate chemicals to correct that. But there are also other concerns that the document points out. One of those is topography and slope. And as was shown in that LIDAR map, you know that it's very steep going down to the pits. So I would need to work with them in the future on how to make sure that berms would be put in place to stop runoff from going down into the pits. So that's a future issue I'd be working with per MAPC's requirement that I approve their BMPs. And I would be looking at other issues as well to make sure for the safety of the environment. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
A couple questions. One is the campground portion of it. They're either going to have to use a septic tank or a lagoon, I would imagine, for the wastewater. Would not have the same concerns going into this lagoon that's, or this pit that's over where the...
A sandy soil would require septic, where a clay soil would require lagoons. So this is a sandy soil situation. There are requirements, and that would be from the Metropolitan Area Building Construction Department. When they approve those in the future, they would look at the soil, the permeability of the soil, how fast water would be moving through those, and the extent it would travel, and would it be traveling into the pits depending on the location. So MABCD would have to look at that for any approvals for on-site waste disposal.
But if this pit has not been remediated, wouldn't it be entirely possible for that wastewater to get into this aqueous bed?
Yes.
As far as lead contamination of the aqueous beds, how much lead does it take to contaminate those aqueous beds?
EPA developed guidelines on lead and other metals and chemicals, and they have what's called maximum contaminant level goals. For lead, the goal is 0 because of the health concerns associated with lead. Realizing that 0 is not possible in real life, they looked at 15 parts per billion for the level of lead, and they based the requirements mainly on systems that are already set up for the distribution of water. Since cities have lead in their pipes, you could have a change, and I think Flint, Michigan is a good example of that, where they had hard water, the calcium carbonate from the hard water lines the inside of the pipe, causing a barrier from the drinking water hitting that lead in the pipe. And they had been testing for years good for the lead amounts. when they changed their water supply, it was a soft water which dissolved the lining of calcium carbonate, therefore exposing the lead in the pipes, and that's when you started having the high levels of lead in the drinking water in Flint, Michigan. So what I'm pointing out is there's some variables in there. We're not looking at lead pipes in this situation. We're looking at residents or agriculture using that water for domestic use or irrigation.
Okay. We're going to have some more questions later, but the information that you and Scott provided us, that information was not available at the time that the MAPC met. Is that correct?
Right. Groundwater Management District happened after that because of a complaint made to Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And they said they get involved after contamination where remediation starts. They contacted the Kansas Water Office and the head of that, and she contacted me. And so that's kind of the loop of how we got Groundwater Management District involved to determine if they had any concerns on this. And realize water tables fluctuate through time. They're not stagnant. If you have a lot of irrigation going on, it may lower the water table. Rainfall raises the water table. So the point is, last week, the water table was in the bottom of the pits.
Very good. Well, you just learned about a lot of this information Thursday, as I recall.
Correct.
And have we notified the applicants so that they understand the concerns?
We had a conference call with the applicant Friday afternoon. It was late Thursday when I received the email from Groundwater Management District 2. I notified Scott immediately, and we set up a conference call the next day with the applicant to make them aware. And I believe that my email that I received was forwarded to them.
Very good. I'm certain there are going to be some more questions environmentally coming up, so please stand by.
Okay, good.
Right. I don't see any other questions from the commission, but at this time I'd like to turn it over to the applicant or agent, and I don't know if you signed in or not. Did you sign in? Okay. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
I'm Tyler Graves. Live at 2956 North Gulf Breeze Court here in Wichita. So a lot has changed since our last time here. Probably the best thing to cover right now is the groundwater intersection with the bottom of the pits. We've worked with the Department of Water Resources and Groundwater Management early this week on a plan to do that, and it's actually very beneficial for what we're trying to do. Adding a bentonite layer to the bottom of that pit is going to seal that off to keep anything from hitting groundwater as well to keep groundwater from coming up. So the portion of the map there just to the west of the green square is going to be, now obviously this is working with Department of, sorry, I keep going back to that, Department of Water Resources to fill that in correctly. It'll be a pond or a small lake, whatever you want to do. So, and that'll be done with whatever materials that department requires us to do. Part of our questions to the Planning Commission was your guys' approval today can't go into effect until that is handled. So obviously what you approve today, you still have departments making sure that things are done in the correct way. Like you had brought up septic. Obviously we're going to work with under the proper codes in order to put septic in there. So I think that's important. We have been working with Susan on best management practices. That's keeping lead completely out of any potential to get to groundwater, as well as runoff that goes over our berms from getting down into the hole. It's the exact same way. If you're out on the site and you can look at the south and west side property lines, there's about an 8-inch, I'd call it a curb. And from my understanding from Jack's last comments at the last meeting was to keep the irrigated runoff from getting down into the hole. So talking with Susan, it would be something similar to where we would essentially put a spot in that if there is major rains, that it floods this one area and it never gets down into that ground, into that pit. That's kind of the plan there, but just know that Susan is going to play a huge role in our BMPs and how we operate as far as the lead mitigation goes. Some other things that we felt were important that did come up at the last meeting was these wells. We have a well there. It's right now it's water right number 42275. That permit it's permitted to fill the area that we want to put a pond. Evidently, from conversations with neighbors, they had tried to do that in the past, but it just goes down into the groundwater. So we were a little confused on how we could take water from that aqueous bed and put it in there. And we're permitted to do that, but we're not permitted to have it evaporate. That was a little confusing, but obviously it's something that we can work with the District of Water Resources to the Division of Water Resources to take care of. Another thing that was brought up is we have a well on our site. We're going to have another drinking well on our site for our lodge, and we're going to be providing water at the campground. So we don't want to drink lead contaminated water or create that issue for any of our neighbors, obviously. So, and then another thing that we wanted to bring up was the protest map. One of the ladies on the planning board brought it up. She wanted to know how many were actually, because a lot of them are zoned. They're the same people that own them, but they're in different names or anything like that. So 5 of those protests are the same family. So obviously it's still over that 20% threshold, but it's not 91%. So I think that was important to mention. So, but that's essentially all we have.
Well, thank you. So the Department of Water Resources, they are going to require some type of bentonite or something to cap the aqueous beds. Is that what your understanding is?
They provided us 2 options. It was to get a permit to allow the groundwater to come up in there and evaporate, or to seal it in, and keep that groundwater from coming up. So that water right number I gave you, that 42275, and talking with it was the groundwater management, the one in Stafford. I get the 2 departments mixed up. I feel like they're kind of do the same thing, but they were telling me that might be an abandoned permit, so we'd have to update that in order to fill it if we wanted to fill it. But the groundwater division gave us those 2 options of either sealing it in or letting it come and getting a permit to do that. From my understanding with Scott, that permit would have to be, or that process, we'd have to make one of those 2 decisions and go through the proper permitting in order for us to act on your approval today. So my understanding, that's a 9 to 12 month process to get that permit. If we want to do the the permit for the evaporating water. So it would be one of those things where we couldn't start operating under the conditions that you approved today until we were properly permitted by everything else. And that goes for the septic also. We weren't.
Well, my concern is if you go the route of trying to get the permit to allow evaporation, you still have the bottom of those holes that are at aqueous bed levels.
Sure, and that's the reason we chose to go ahead and seal it in. We just don't. Tim Bass is the manager of that groundwater district, and he hasn't given us what exactly he wants as far as the materials and the height of sealing those in. But sealing those in would obviously help any possibility of ever lead contamination, just because it's not going to be a porous soil anymore. It'll be, I don't know how thick he wants that sedative, but obviously lead don't migrate through clay. So it would be, that would be the option we would go. It would be the safest option. It's going to make the land look similar to what we had envisioned anyways. So it's a process that came up that, we've got to do it, but it actually is a beneficial for health and beautification of the land. So.
Okay, Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. Outside of the obvious environmental factors and water concerns, I just have a few questions about the reorganization of your plan over here. So your clay pigeon range, will these be automatic throwers or hand throwers?
No, they're automatic. That was actually a concern too that was brought up earlier that wasn't, I don't know if you guys got, but the railroad, Lauren, I think it was Bradford was his name. Yeah, Lauren Bradford reached out and was concerned about the trajectory that it's shooting and, you know, towards the railroad. I talked with him. He's an avid shotgunner, and he understood exactly what we're doing. So it's 5-stand. There's going to be 6 or 8 throwers positioned around the shooter, and that's part of our BMP too. Is those throwers are programmed to make sure that the correct trajectory would never leave our property. The berm that Scott mentioned, I think there was confusion right there. We're not doing a berm. We're at the base of a berm, and we're shooting into an area that has, you know, 80-foot trees that are 120 yards out. So everything is contained in a very deep depression, and that is lead-free. Most shotgun is lead-free just because of duck clubs and things like that they flood fields, and they don't want lead sitting in fields.
So how far away is the clay pigeon range from the rifle range? Will those be open at the same time?
Yes, they will. Yeah, so the yellow box is actually sitting down in the depression about 20 feet lower than the rifle ranges, and shooting the opposite direction. Now the rifle range at the north side of the map, when shotgun's happening, that won't be open. However, lead shot any of the shotgun shot will not get there.
So will you have any sort of stipulations if there's high winds? How are you going to factor high winds in Kansas into your requirements for safety?
I don't understand that. I mean,
We have
winds.
a lot of wind here in Kansas, and if we're shooting bullets into the air, what's the guarantee that that wind wouldn't take it?
Wind is a factor when you're talking angle of minutes and point of impact, but it's not something where it's just going to take a bullet and redirect it. That's not a. It's.
Okay, well, that's fair. And so, how do you plan to utilize, how do you see folks utilizing this property? For instance, are they going to bring their campers and camp in the campground and then utilize, tell me how you envision folks utilizing your.
So our initial plan never had RV, or it had a fishing pond, but it never had RV. When we bought this land, we didn't know what to do with that little weird triangle, okay. So we just incorporated the RV because it was another option we could offer to that type of interest. John and I's envision from the very beginning was a lodge. The shooting's always been secondary. I know in these processes it's kind of magnified into this thing, but we've engaged with a lot of folks about membership so far, and 80% of the people we've got quite a few commitments. We haven't obviously sold anything yet, but a good majority of the people that have committed to this don't even own guns. They're just in it for March Madness at the lodge or whatever, just the camaraderie of this. So.
Will you be serving alcohol on your
No,
property?
Absolutely not.
So there won't be any camping at all?
There's camping on the north side of the railroad, but it's no tent camping. It's only RV.
Okay, so will you allow alcohol in the RVs?
On that side of the railroad tracks, yes.
So could there potentially be people who camp in their RVs, utilize alcohol, and then shoot guns? Could you see that happening?
I mean, that would be breaking the law, but I mean, we're not going to breathalyze people. There will be gates to get into the gun range and shooting hours and things like that, but I mean, I don't think that you guys are approving this based on laws being broken.
Well, I'm just trying to make sure that we're covering our basis.
Oh, I completely
That's
understand.
kind of what I'm trying to do right now.
If
Going
that-
back to the shotguns, a shotgun bullet, how many pieces does it?
Well, there's a lot of
Explode
different.
into.
There's a lot of different ones. Like your 7 shot's going to have, I think it's got 16 pellets in it. The max trajectory on that I could find, and that was actually something that was, I don't know if that was in your guys' report, the trajectory report for shotguns. The max distance that a 7 shot can travel is 693 feet, and that is at the perfect trajectory with the perfect environment. So in a heavy air environment like this, and then our program throwers, we'll never see them get over, out of that complete area right there.
Okay. Well, never is a strong word. I mean, accidents do happen.
Sure,
That's what we have to really.
That's part of our BMPs too, that kind of address the alcohol thing. If that happens, it's termination of your membership, and you're no longer allowed here. So.
Okay, those are all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions for you at this time.
Okay.
And we'll call Audrey Heflin up. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Audrey Hefling. I live at 10255 North, 295th Street West.
Will you pull that microphone down, please, so we can hear you? Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
It's likely that you don't want to hear from me again. Quite honestly, I'm not that thrilled about it either. But I feel compelled to do what I believe is right. I want to learn today what is so beneficial about a gun range that it's worth risking the dangers that it presents. Your own expert has verified that lead contamination is a danger to what's considered to be a good water source, our only water source, and the water source for the entire city of Mount Hope. The applicants stated at the zoning meeting that due to the cost of their potential members, they will not be a lead-free zone. They will use lead in some of their of the things that they use. They also stated that the 92% protest was really only a few families and that we are related, so somehow that makes our lives less significant. Well, I consider every life significant. And although I'm not related to all of the protest individuals, I do value them very much. And our discussions have included water pollution, noise, and training students at the school to ignore the sound of gunfire. And still we persist. The tract of land could produce income from so many other endeavors. A resident to the southeast grows marketable trees, and we know this ground produces thriving trees. A mile west, they grow grapes. The applicants themselves want an RV park. The property would be great for wilderness-style camping, and even a treehouse camping. Did you know that treehouses camping can generate $400 a night? That was amazing to me to find that out. An excellent moneymaker would be a charging station for K96. This possibility even appears to have grant money available, and the property already has a 3-phase power line leading to it from the south. What I'm saying is the possibilities are endless. It doesn't have to be a gun range. If we have a gun range, it could destroy our water. I appreciate the fact that they're trying to come up with solutions, but the fact is it's very dangerous. Our purpose for this protest is not to destroy their hopes and dreams. It's to preserve the usable water for our area. Less than 2 weeks ago, Wichita experienced a boil water advisory. That resulted in, where I work, summer school sessions being canceled, businesses being closed. Recovering from a lead contamination in water is just not a boil water situation. It would take much more. Even if they state that the lead-free shells need to be used in the gunshot area, not in the pistol or the rifle range, who's going to monitor that? Do you honestly think that people who come and go on their own with a lock fob will always follow the rules? I spend an hour and a half on the road every day. Do you think that the people without fail obey the speed limit? I can tell you they don't. Littering has been a misdemeanor in the state of Kansas since 2014, and yet we see bag after bag of collected materials by the cleanup crews. If nobody is watching, then the rules are broken. You know this. You cannot honestly believe that the unsupervised individuals will comply with using the more expensive ammunition when no one is monitoring or watching. If you vote to allow this range, I hope that someone has the financial means to pay for the cleanup once the contamination occurs. And it will occur because you cannot retrieve the tiny airborne contaminants that will be emitted, not to mention the lead particles or the dust. The bigger and catastrophic problem is what lead contamination will do before it is discovered. Are you aware that lead that you cannot see or smell or taste in your water causes premature births, developmental delays, and damage to brain development in a fetus? When will it be enough of a problem? When some young Mount Hope parents lose their baby to a miscarriage? Well, it's only one family, right? Does that matter? It matters to us. We're only one family, according to the people. Is it insignificant? Or maybe when a toddler has developmental delay. I've dedicated my life to young children. My entire life has been spent teaching children with and without developmental delays, and I love every one of them. But the ones with developmental delays really struggled. I can tell you that. So how many need to be affected before the applicants, and I will not say her name, but that one of the people from the impact think that it's enough to care? How many lives are worth the trade-off? We're only one family. So with Jack and I, that's 2 lives. Add our children and their families, that's 12. So 12 lives aren't worth it? How many lives need to be affected before a life counts? The applicant stated that they will be drinking the water. So what I say to them is you are significant. And if you have a wife or a girlfriend, a sister, or any other woman of childbearing age that you care about, or if you have young children, do not let them drink the water if you're going to approve this range. Just as the young women of Mount Hope should not drink it. And to my family, Gina and Moan and Jake and Cecilia, Kylie and Peyton, Elise and Cruz and Caden and Joey, I won't let them drink it either. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I don't see any questions. Next speaker is Jack Heflin. State your name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Jack Heflin, 10255 North 295th Street West. I'll start off by saying I contest this for the record. I didn't come prepared because I have sent a lot of information, and I hope you people have read it. I did forget to welcome or greet you guys, the commissioners, sorry. But there's some topics brought up, and this one is a new site plan, and we've talked about shotgun ranges. 300 yards is the standard for popular gun ranges to set up a new range, and that's 900 foot. And I've given you some information on that, how far 900 foot reaches. And they're going to be shooting into trees on this berm, 700 or 70 foot tall trees. Well, if you keep shooting them, they're going to shoot all the leaves off of them. And the leaves gone, and then fall shows up, and all the trees don't have any leaves on them. It's an open shot from there to the highway. And who's going to be shooting at the rifle range? I mean, are they shooting at them? They're shooting over them? That doesn't show where the stand's going to be for the rifle range. Over in the southwest corner where they've got the pistol range set up, there's a high pressure gas line goes underneath there. I don't think gas line will let them build berms on top of the gas line. There's 2.5 to 3 acres of water in the hole right now, according to the satellite imagery. That's 14% of that west half that's underwater. And you just don't shoot into water, especially water that's it's in the groundwater. It's water that we drink. The number one cardinal rule when you set up a new station or a new gun range And that's to set up your shooters in the northeast direction. Because the sun comes up in the east and the sun goes down the west, you don't have your shooters shooting into the sun, and you don't have them shooting into the sun in the evening in the west. So you should shoot them up northeast, northeast. And that's kind of it's not gonna work. Irrigation, there was a map on the distance to site for private wells. I just counted up at 3,000 foot, which takes in part of the amount of, doesn't even go quite to the center amount. There's 3,000 or 33 wells within a 3,000 foot. Those are irrigation and private wells also. Topographical part of it. In the southwest where the pistol range is at, that was made for a duck pond. And that's why there's a berm around it. And the previous owners irrigated that, filled with water. It was about 2 foot berms. Filled it with water so the ducks would come in. Well, there was no water there when they go to hunting because it went down. It sunk down. There's a perimeter around the perimeter, there's a border. So that meant it went down into the hole. It didn't go out on my field because there's a border. There's a perimeter that's got a berm. So the water, even in the southwest corner that's at ground level, that water goes down into the hole. And I could tell you stories from when they built the first hole, dug the first hole, how big there was a washout. You could put a small house in. That's where it just went down, and it ended up down the bottom of the hole. That's why there's some debris back in the corner from fencing and car hoods or whatever, a grain bin maybe, anything to keep the erosion from it at bay. But that's, like I say, I contest this, and that's all I have.
Thanks, sir. I don't see any questions. Next speaker, Mayor Terry Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commission, for listening to me today. We think that there are an awful lot of unanswered questions, and I think in the process of this whole thing, we were advised more than once that we didn't have any authority or anything to do with any kind of decisions made. However, there's great impact potential, in terms of our community. I will tell you that our main water well is just a little over half a mile, which is a little over 2,600 feet, from this site. There's also at that particular point a special needs school that is part of the Mays School District. They come over and use that. Deals with severely handicapped children, both physically and severely emotional. And in a previous, according to the minutes of a previous meeting, I believe it was the MAPC, the applicants indicated that they had tested the noise level by shooting one gun rapidly. And I would like to say that if they're going to be shooting more than just one gun at a time, I think their test is inadequate. And the only thing I can relate that to is, have you ever been to a ceremony where they had a 21 gun salute? That's pretty noisy. So more than one gun shooting at a time is going to elevate, in my opinion, that noise level. And I'm really concerned about the economics of things for our community in terms of going back to the school. What happens if that noise is effective and the individuals decide to close the school. We've been through a school closure before, but I would really like to have an environmental impact study done on that, as it impacts not only the site but also the area around, because it is a a wetland. We had an experience of a park and some land being donated to us, and there needed to be an impact study at that particular time before the land transaction went forward. But there is water in that. There was water in that prior to the recent rains. I know this because of people who frequent that, and there were cattails growing in the bottom of that pit at the time, that according to my sources. And so I just think that we haven't had a thorough study of this thing, and the biggest thing is for me, at least, we've never talked with, as a city, and city offices, we've never had a conversation with the applicants. And they've spoken many times in previous meetings, according to minutes, that they want to be good neighbors. And so there's been, any contact that's happened has come from our contacts. There's never been a return call or anything of that nature upon when we had some had opportunity to try to set one up. So we're very concerned about the copper and lead and other contaminants. There's a couple of communities northwest of us that had to upgrade their water system, their treatment plants, and that's a pretty expensive undertaking, and especially where we are, that would be very detrimental to us as well. So therefore, I think no more study should be done. And in 2025, all the cities are going to have to test for copper and lead. We do that already. In fact, right now, we've done a lot of work on it. Right now, our readings are about halfway in between the parameters that they set for us. But that deals with infrastructure that we already have in place. So I just wish we would get more details, and I don't believe it's been thoroughly researched at this particular point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just trying to think about where Mount Hope is. Is this about a mile and a half from the applicant's site?
No, our west city limits is a half a mile east of the proposed site, and it is 1 mile. The site is 1 mile east of the Reno County line.
Okay, I'm looking at the map here. I guess the arrow's not very accurately placed on this map. That's fine. I'm looking at the minutes from the previous meetings. Is this the first time you've spoken at one of these meetings on this?
It's actually the second. I wasn't at the very initial test. In fact, we didn't receive any information from MAPC. It got messed up and went into our city clerk's spam file. I'd learned about the meeting just a couple of days before it, before the original MAPC meeting. You know.
So are you here on behalf of the city of Mountain Hope as a mayor or as a citizen, or
as a mayor? We've talked about this in a session at our last council meeting, and they
did your council vote to develop this position?
We are. I'm not sure what you're saying.
Did your city council? You said they discussed it.
They gave me authority in our executive session to present this. Yes.
So I appreciate that, but this is not in the growth area, or it's not. There's a boundary around most cities that have what we call the growth area or urban area designation.
When I think it was 2014. They removed the 3 mile area of influence, and at that time they told us that it would have to be incorporated in a comprehensive plan, and also at that particular time that comprehensive the area of influence that you were considering should be accurate as to the time of the plan. And so our current plan expires in 2030, and we've been unaware that there was an opportunity to expand that. So we have a small staff, and we didn't get that communication.
What's the population of Mount Hope today?
806.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next speaker is Randy Dick.
I'm Randy Dick from Mount Hope, and I own some property right next to, across the road from there, where they're wanting to do it. And I'm against it, I'll tell you that to begin with, because it's a fly real quick decision part of it, and I didn't understand some of the paperwork that they said they was wanted to rush it to get it through, and I couldn't understand why they would want to do that, you know, besides something not being right to begin with. But anyway, and I thank you for letting me comment on this, and I've never met these guys or any of the people, you know. I've talked to one of them. I called one of them on the phone and told him what I thought about what they were trying to do, and I just was against it, you know, because it's, you know, old things are hard to let go of, old quiet communities we like. So say you guys had something wanting to do right behind you, what would you think of that, the people who are deciding on this decision? You know, and as far as revenue for anybody, who's the revenue for? County, city, Mount Hope, them, who? You know, who all is it benefiting besides the people, you know, putting it in there? And there's been many things that's been tried to do and they folded. Outdoor hunting, you know, businesses, and there's one 7 miles down the road that they had one in Haven, Kansas, and they were doing stuff illegal, so they shut it down, you know. These things are not cut and dry at all. That's what's going on right now. They don't know what the heck they want to do until it happens. Well, how long is that going to take in the money for, in our time, it's a bunch of hogwash. You know, you usually have something organized if you're going to do that. And if you're going to spend somebody's money or your money, you think you would want to have it organized and ready to go. But that's half of my reason I'm here, because I didn't like the idea of wanting to rush this through. Well, that was on the statements put on the papers delivered to us or sent in the mail. Now that right there's a red flag. You know, and them not talking to nobody personally, like Terry Somers just said. You know, you think you'd go check your community out where you're going to put something. If I go to move somewhere and live, I'm going to go see who's living around that area. I'm not just going to move in and, you know, go from there. But anyway, you know, and I was just curious, has any of you people actually been out to that site, not satellite and all that? Have anybody ever drove out there and looked at things? I don't know. I doubt it. That's what's bad. Even though it's a Wichita Planning Commission, that's a mile from the county line, and we don't get looked upon at all out there, hardly. You know, they just want tax money, and that's fine, because we're part of Sedgwick County, but we're not part of the city of Wichita. So for them to help and try to plan the decisions on what happens out there, do you want me coming in here to the city of Wichita and trying to plan things? No, I don't live here. If I lived here and voted here and all that, it would be right. Even though that's a city up on herself out there, and that is not in the city, I understand that. But our farm ground right across the road, it's sure awful nice to go out there and not hear a darn thing. And people not coming and going. I pick up trash every day out there on the road. You know, and not saying these guys or people would throw trash out, but that's something that they don't even consider what's going on, you know. That's what I don't like about all this, just trying to get rushed through, you know. You see all the stuff that we've all going to be come up on with the water, you know, the Division of Water Resources. And, you know, the groundwater management, that is two different organizations also. They're not the same. And, and you're talking the state of Kansas. You want to, who's going to pay all the fines? Are the people, members going to pay all the fines, or you guys? But anyway, I'm not going to say much more, and I appreciate you letting us talk. But, it's not right to just go in somewhere and try to do what you want if you got a little money, or if you don't have money, things happen different for the people that are already there. That's the main thing. And the water, I love my water out there. I'll drink it every day. I've drank salt water 2 miles east of Mount Hope. Okay. So we got some of the best water in the country for now. And we want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I don't see any questions. Do any commissioners have anything else that they'd like to ask of any of the speakers today? Commissioner Howell.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for the chance to speak. A couple things. First of all, I guess I did receive a couple of emails on this. I should have said it earlier. I mentioned expert communication. I think primarily the emails were from the opponent's side. Just the last speaker, I have a clarifying question I'd like to ask him. So Mr. Dick, would you please come back to the podium for questions, please? You mentioned a couple times in your testimony that there was a effort to rush it, to get it through. Where did you see that?
The first letter we got, it was an emergency type deal. They put on the letter. And what?
Yeah, let me ask Director Wadle.
What did that mean? Yeah.
Sure.
I can provide some explanation on that one. And the reason why our notices go out about an emergency meeting for the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission is because the meetings include a virtual component, so the ability for people to participate over the internet or to call in. And by the MAPC bylaws, in order to do that, it needs to be declared as an emergency meeting. We have been operating under that function since COVID struck, and we are now revisiting that with the MAPC. They're having a discussion about their bylaws. Actually, they just had one. They're going to continue that discussion to try and get those bylaws updated so that we no longer have to put that on the letter. But that is a regular feature of those notices at this point.
So would you clarify then, there's not an effort to speed this up or make a quick decision as it was testified by Mr. Dick?
No, the schedule has not been changed. It's not changed by that at all. This is a regular schedule just for any other case. So the emergency declaration on there is strictly about the bylaws. It has nothing to do with the schedule in this case.
Appreciate that clarification. I have one question for Mr. Mayor Summers, if that's acceptable, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Summers, I have a question for you. You stated earlier that you and your council had a discussion regarding this. Was this on the agenda for the public, or is this a discussion that happened during the meeting? Was it an agenda item?
Yes, it was an agenda item, and we had an attorney-client discussion on that. Yes.
So was the public invited to speak on this topic in the city of Mount Hope?
Nobody attended or spoke to it.
But they had a notification that this discussion was going to happen.
I'm not sure that we had. Yeah, we did have. It was. I believe it was listed on the agenda as an item. So I'd have to verify that. I'd look at that.
Okay. All right. I guess I'd like to go back and research that and find out
the
agenda.
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
have time. We're getting to a point where we have to make a decision today.
I understand.
But it's important to me that the public is fully aware of their opportunities to influence policymakers and
well, the other side of it, having very little information and no contact, there hasn't been anything for us to really present, pertaining to that, at least directly from the applicant, so that we could proceed. And so I just feel like we've been on the backside, from day one in this thing. So
thank you. I have a question for Susan Erlenwine. She's still here. Thank you for being here still, and I appreciate that. So, as I read some of the information that came from the email that you shared, I think on Tuesday, I think I saw it, that they basically, the Division of Water said that there would be some
The one from Tim Bays from the Groundwater Management District?
Yeah, and that phrase he actually used in the email, I think this is right in the email, it says, "I recommend that the applicant develop." Now, those are not very strong words. Is there actually a requirement then to mitigate this issue of evaporation or the putting the bentonite on the clay on the
Correct.
ground is a requirement?
When the applicant was talking, I think you were kind of mixing the two state agencies up. Division of Water Resources is the one that gives permits for appropriation of water for water wells or the evaporation of the groundwater through lakes. That was Jeff Lanterman in Stafford office. Jeff's recommendation was that they either get permits for the evaporation of the water, which he could not guarantee there would be the water appropriation amounts to do that, or work with Groundwater Management District 2 to determine how to properly seal the bottom of the pits. And it's up to Groundwater Management District number 2 to determine the type of material, if it's bentonite clay, soil, sand, combination of that, and how deep it is. Jeff made a comment that they would have guidelines for that, and it may be associated with the historic level of the groundwater table.
So they have the authority
Yes,
to
they
make
do.
requirements and to monitor the compliance, and if they don't comply, not just at the beginning, but anytime in the future, they have the authority to permit them to operate or to shut them down. Is that correct?
Correct.
And will they have an ongoing interest in this? Again, not just the very beginning, but will they continue to monitor this as they go forward?
I would have to talk to Tim about how often they would monitor that, or if they go the permit route. They've indicated they want to fill in the pit. But it would be up to them to make sure that it was done correctly and to follow up on any monitoring they would want to do.
Mr. Dick, when he provided some testimony just a moment ago, he said that there was another shooting range similar to this one that they were doing illegal things and they were shut down. Are you familiar with what he was talking about?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right, thank you for those answers. And Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Mr. Dick that question.
Okay.
Please
That
come
would
back to
be
the
in,
podium. Please come back to the podium.
that
Thank
would
you.
be in Reno County.
Where was this location?
Yeah, and I did
where
not
were they
say
doing
a
illegally?
shooting range. I said it like a guiding or a outdoor life thing. It was not a shooting range. I didn't say shooting range. But it was just a progression type, like a business to take people out in the outdoor to go hunting and stuff. That is the business I was talking about, not a shooting range. But it has to do with wildlife and shooting guns and things. And
So what were they doing illegally? They were accused of?
I
and
cannot
were
say.
they charged? And,
I cannot say.
And what authority shut them down?
It's the outdoor life, or the business with outdoor, the hunting and fish and game. This located in Haven, Kansas.
So KD, Kansas Department of Wildlife and
The
Parks.
fish and
shut them
game,
down?
yes.
Fish
yes.
and game.
They were caught doing illegal things.
We don't know what those illegal things were.
I cannot say.
So my questions for you for the moment. Thank you. A couple of points I'd make. Discussion that's come up here today. There was some discussion about people who would be drinking alcohol and shooting firearms. I think it was in 2013 or 2014. I actually wrote that into law. One of the laws that I passed are pro-Second Amendment laws that made it illegal to be in possession of a firearm if you're .08 blood alcohol content, .08, same as driving. If it's illegal to drive a car because you've been drinking alcohol, it's also illegal to possess a firearm. And I didn't say shoot, I said possess. So possession of a firearm at .08 blood alcohol content or higher is illegal in the state of Kansas. I don't know if I like the assumption of people breaking the laws and us trying to regulate people's property rights based on assumptions of people breaking Kansas laws. I mean, I don't take someone's car away assuming they're going to drink alcohol. They drink alcohol, they get caught, they lose their driving privileges when that happens. And so we want to be very careful not to regulate people and take people's rights away before they do something illegal. And we don't want to assume that they'll do something illegal. That's not fair to people's private property rights, and on it goes. I guess back to Susan Erlenwine for just a moment. Sorry, I'm taking too long here, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. But
No, that's fine.
We talked a lot about, there's been a lot of discussion. This is like the fourth or fifth stop of this discussion to bring us to this point today. And there's been all kinds of discussion about noise and septic tanks and traffic and, wayward bullets and all kinds of things have come up in the discussion over the last number of meetings, I understand. At the end of the day, it sounds like this entire thing, last time it stopped, it was MAPC. They actually went from, I think, a 9 to 2 to 11 to 0 or whatever it was. Actually increased their approval to unanimous decision. The only thing they didn't know about is this issue of lead. Has anybody actually calculated how much lead will be shot out of during the operation of this site? What's the amount of lead? Because again, shotgun shells generally are no lead now.
I think the chairman can answer.
Can I address that?
Yeah, I just want to finish my question. Full metal jacket. If you're shooting a pistol, most people who shoot full metal jacket, pistol ammo if they're doing target practice. No lead there, and rifle bullets have very small amount of lead, and sometimes are lead free. So I'd like to know, altogether how much lead are we talking about? Go ahead, Chairman.
Certainly. I've got 5 presses. I load constantly. I shoot skeet, sporting clays, pheasants, ducks, geese. Of course, those you got to shoot ducks and geese, non-toxic lead. But if we're shooting a typical 5-stand, for example, and I really don't shoot 5-stand very often, but it's basically the same as skeet or sporting clays. What I reload is an 1 1/8 of either 7.5 or 9 shot in order to be able to shoot. An 1 1/8, if I shoot 1 round, that's 25 shots, okay? You multiply that out, and it's just short of 2 pounds of lead that I fire every time that I shoot 1 round. I've never shot 1 round. Normally I shoot about 4 rounds. So I shoot about 10 pounds of lead every time that I shoot a round of skeet or sporting clays. Let's take that if you're shooting 5-stand and calculate it out. If we've got 5 people and they each shoot 4 rounds as I do, at that point in time, we're shooting 40 to 50 pounds of lead out, just shooting 4 rounds of sporting clay, of 5-stand. So, and I load shotgun shells, rifles. I'm an avid deer hunter. I shoot pheasants, you name it, doves. And so I'm fairly familiar because, as I said, I've got 5 different reloaders. So I know exactly how much lead that I use when I'm reloading. So I hope that answers your question on how much goes out.
Can I speak to that? Our shotgun's lead free.
Actually, I was going to...
Well, let me clarify that. And you're talking about lead-free shotgun shells. The only shotgun shells that are lead-free are steel, tungsten, bismuth that I'm aware of. Again, remember, I load. Also, if you're reloading, well, let's just go out to Cabela's. A box of any non-toxic shot out there, minimum of $21, maximum of $47 for 1 shot, 1 box of shells. I do not believe that anybody in a non-monitored area would be shooting non-toxic shot. And the smallest shot, the smallest that I've ever seen in non-toxic shot is number 5. Most of the time it's something like BBs, 2s, and so forth, because they're used for game birds that require non-toxic shot, like ducks and geese. So I don't see you shooting non-toxic shot at your targets. That does not make sense to me. Commissioner.
So back to my question. Has anybody calculated how much lead will be expended at this site?
No, there's so many variables on that, on how many people will be shooting, the gauge of the shotgun, if it does come on board and not be lead-free, and then the bullets, the type of rifle, all of that, how much is happening. There's too many variables to calculate exactly how much lead. I do know that lead dissolves in pHs less than 7.5, and so it depends a lot on the acidity and of the water and how long it stays in the water, or if it's on the surface of the land, the oxidation with the air will help break it down as well.
So they have requirements to monitor the acidity of the ground, and if they find it's too acidic, they have to add something to the soil to change that. Is that correct?
Right. Typically, you're adding lime or phosphate. Phosphate will adhere to lead and precipitate it out.
So that's a mitigation for, so again, monitoring lead levels in the water, monitoring acidity, and mitigating the results of having lead in the soil would be something they have to continue to do.
Monitoring of water is not a BMP that's been discussed yet, but I think that is part of it. And really, you need to take samples ahead of time before anything happens as a baseline before you proceed into the future for soil testing, everything.
I don't know who's on this property going way back, but I would bet money that there's been people out there shooting guns a lot in the history of that site. In fact, around Mount Hope, I'm sure Mayor Summers will probably tell you, people shoot guns all around them. I'm sure you hear guns in your city from people out there hunting or target practicing out on their property. Guns out in the rural parts of Sedgwick County are very, very popular, and I live in Derby, and I can hear guns going off outside the city of Derby very often. So I just think that's part of the rural life. People enjoy their firearms, and so a lot of the land that we saw pictures of are very flat. They don't show those depressions. I guess those depressions are, I don't know how big they are, but a lot of, again, they're trying to shoot in areas that the lead would not be concentrated in the deep parts of those pits. And then there's all these mitigations have to take place. And so I don't want to overplay the risk of lead. I think that lead is a concern. In my lifetime, we used to have lead paint, we had lead pipes. I shoot guns often, and I handle the bullets. If they have lead on them, I'm touching them, and on it goes. And so there's a lot of exposure to lead. I don't want to say it's not a risk. Certainly it is, but I also don't want to overplay this either. So you have your comment.
Well, throughout time, lead has been used, as you mentioned, for many things. It used to be used in solder on the cans that food was put in, and the acidity of the food would eat the lead out of the solder, and people came down with lead poisoning. And so then they passed laws about not using lead in cans. They were used in the glazes, and you had lead glazes on pottery. Again, people would put orange juice or another acidic juice in there. It would eat the lead out of the lining. Lead pipes. Now we have copper pipes or PVC pipes for drinking water. The list goes on and on about how lead had many good uses in the past, fishing weights, bullets, but over time, leaded gasoline was common for the anti-knock that it provided for the engines. But then they realized the lead emissions, the lead actually accumulated along the roadsides in the soil, and to this day you can test lead along highways for lead along highways and find it in the soils because of the emissions from the tailpipes from burning the leaded gas. So through time, many discoveries have been made on that lead along with other chemicals are not the best for our health, and then that's what causes rules to be created to step away from it. Thus, as Commissioner Dennis mentioned, the waterfowl and hunting waterfowl, you're not allowed due federal law to use lead in your shotgun pellets.
Thank you for those comments. It wasn't that many years ago they started mandating lead-free solder, because even in copper pipes they used lead solder to make the joints, and so that didn't take all the lead out of the plumbing. And that was a fairly recent change. It was maybe 20 years ago that was changed. I'm not sure the exact year. I did a little bit of study. I was doing some study trying to find out people who are professional marksman shooters that handle ammunition very, very frequently, that have their hands on lead. They test them they test their bodies to find out if they have any lead concentration in their bodies, and they come back with zero. So again, just even handling lead, or people who go fishing who handle lead sinkers. Again, it's also changed over time. People used to use lead sinkers all the time. Yeah. Now that's gone to I guess non-lead non-lead sinkers, but people used to handle or even make their own sinkers. Used to melt the lead and pour their own, pour the molds and have lead sinkers. And so there's so many ways for lead to get into the environment. If you were to test it today, I would be surprised if you didn't actually come up with some type of concentration of lead there that's already there for all kinds of reasons. One of the most, I have two compelling points I'll make today. One of these is people have a right to use their property as long as they don't hurt someone else. Everyone has property rights. Both the applicants and the opponents have property rights. If the applicants can do this in a way that doesn't hurt the opponents, then they ought to be allowed to do so. And this is constitutional, not just the Second Amendment on the right to bear arms, but it's also the Fifth and the 14th Amendments deal with the issue of taking a property without due process. The Constitution matters to me. And although I want to allow see the applicant use his property rights, he has no right to hurt the opponent's property rights. And I think that's what's being discussed today is the regulatory agencies of the Division of Water Resources and the state's
Groundwater Management District,
groundwater, as well as the federal EPA. They all have an interest in this, and they are going to regulate them to the nth degree because they really like regulations. They really like to make sure that people don't do things to hurt other people. So I guess I would say, I don't know that it's up to the Board of County Commissioners to assume people are going to break the rules. We're going to assume they're going to use lead shot. We're going to assume every regulatory agency out there is not going to do their job. And so we're going to vote no to deny the applicant his property rights. I've got concerns about those assumptions. I am inclined to stick with MAPC's recommendation because those regulatory agencies are going to do their job. Because I trust gun owners to follow the rules. They're very good. I've said plenty. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. I appreciate it. I don't see any other comments, so I'll bring it back to the board to see if there's any questions or comments. Seeing none, let me make a couple statements. I've been a life member of the NRA for 30, 40 years. I already stated that I shoot a lot. And I understand reloading and shooting and the property rights of different individuals. But those property rights only go up until they start infringing on other individuals' property rights or causing some kind of harm to other individuals. And we are also the Board of County Commissioners for Sedgwick, not only the Board of County Commissioners, we're also the Board of Health for Sedgwick County. So we have to make sure that we're protecting the health and welfare of all of the citizens in Sedgwick County. So am I torn on this? Absolutely, I can tell you that because I care about property rights, I care about being able to shoot, but also I care about protecting the environment. So, and I've already stated my concerns about how much lead can go into the environment just from one round of sporting, or not sporting clays, 5-stand in this case. And if you look at the amount of lead that goes into water, it's like 15 parts per billion, something like that. And it doesn't take very much lead whatsoever to contaminate all of the water supplies that's coming out of the Equus bed going into places like Mount Hope and all of the other areas. So we've heard from some of the folks that are working this issue from the state. There's probably federal issues that are involved in it for the protection of our community. So I'd like to make a motion that the board defers this matter indefinitely until such time that the applicant provides written documentation from federal, state, and any other authorities that all environmental concerns and permits have been complied with and an environmental impact statement has been prepared for this area. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess my question would be, based on the testimony of Susan Erlenwine, I thought we basically covered this already, that these agencies are going to be engaged. We may not know exactly what their conclusions or requirements will be, but they'll be fully engaged to make sure that this lead concern is not going to impact the neighbors or people in the community. We have agencies, this is their job, this is what they do. And again, without knowing those details right now, I know that they're going to do that. So I guess I don't know what it is we're asking for specifically, because I think we already know that these agencies are going to be involved to that degree. So I guess I'm going to vote no on your motion. Thank you.
I guess to answer your question is that I want it deferred until we know that it is mitigated, so that there is no damage or no environmental impact to the rest of the community. So that's what my motion was. Seeing no further questions, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
No.
Commissioner Lopez? Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Item L, set hearing for dangerous or unsafe structures.
Oh, yeah. Madam Clerk, let's hold on for just a second. We've been going for 2.5 hours, and it's probably time to take a little bit short break. So why don't we take a break until 25 till. manager might be out in the hall. I'm still missing Tom.
He's coming.
He's coming? Well, good morning. Welcome back, everyone. By the clock that I was going by, it is now 25 till exactly. So, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item L, set hearing for dangerous or unsafe structure.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Chris Labram, MABCD for the record. So the item before you today will ask you to set a public hearing, and I'm throwing in the word potentially dangerous and unsafe condition related to one of our tornado damaged properties. So the address in question is, or the topic I should say, is 3125 South, 145th Street East. This is a residential home that was destroyed by the tornado on April 29th. Was declared a complete loss by the insurance carrier. In accordance with state and local regulations, we receive 15% of the insurance proceeds in order to ensure that all unsafe conditions on the property would be mitigated. We received those on the 12th of May. I do want to emphasize here that that's all that those proceeds are retained to do, just to ensure that the property is not left in an unsafe condition. As part of our local procedures and regulations, there's a 45-day decision point at which the commission does have to set a public hearing if we're in a situation where we may have to use those proceeds to remedy a situation on the property. I do not think we're going to have to exercise that, but the 45-day mark is June 26th, so this is the last meeting we have before that time. And so I'll go through a few of the details with this particular property. Specifically, the owner intends to rebuild on the current foundation. That's not something that our builders do often. Luckily, that's not something that is needed or happens very often. It does add some extra pieces to the process to include engineering on the foundation that is required. The owner and the contractor in this case have made significant progress, as you'll see if you haven't already looked at them in the pictures that we'll take a look at in the cleanup, also in the building plans. At this point, really all we're lacking is the engineering needs to be completed. There are some repairs that you'll see need to be done to the foundation, and the builder is seeking to get the building permit. So the only issue that I'm going to point out here is that we're just not quite to the point of having that permit in place, and so that does give us the potential of an unsafe condition in the future. Spoke with the property owner and the contractor again yesterday to make sure they know exactly what's going on and where we're at, and they understand that this will not change their timelines in any way, that this does not in any way mean that their insurance proceeds would be kept longer than absolutely necessary, and they did again reiterate that they're getting close in that process. The only thing at play here, as soon as I have that building permit in place, if for some reason they were going to discontinue the project, and in that outside chance that the owner was to walk away from it, I would still be able to hold the contractor responsible to fill in or otherwise make safe the open basement. So once I have that permit, we're comfortable that we don't have an unsafe, the potential of an unsafe condition, and we can move on. But as it stands today, if both the owner and the contractor were to walk away, we would either need to exercise the use of those proceeds to fill in the basement or remove the basement, or we would be looking at tax dollars to do that. So just a few quick pictures here to confirm the address, and then also that first one you can see that foundation remains. You can also see that they've done a great job cleaning up the site so far, keeping things in order and safe, especially while they have personnel on site. We're not worried about it, which they do here. They were in the process of filling and moving dumpsters while I was out there. This was Monday morning. So that pile that you see there is gone now as well. This is the foundation. That will be rebuilt. You can see on the back wall area there that there was some damage from the tornado that will need to be repaired. The engineer's going to have them do some repairs in each of those corners. Again, that they're just still drawing the final criteria up for those. And then the builder is working with that to create their final bid estimate, exact dimensions of the house. That will be all the requirements to come get that building permit. So just another angle there. Also, you can maybe a little bit easier see the damage. And again, want to emphasize that worksite is clean. Contractor's done great work. We've had good communication, very solid communication with the contractor, as well as then keeping the owner informed as to what's happening. So with that, we are recommending that the BOCC set a public hearing for the 7th of September, which also gives plenty of time in the meantime, and authorize the required publication of that. Also then, of course, want to note that in accordance with our policies and regulations, that if at any time in this process or as soon as in this process that property is returned to a safe condition, prior to that public hearing, we will initiate the release of those proceeds and would cancel the public hearing. With that, we'll gladly stand for questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of questions. Thank you for the presentation. Doing some backwards calculation here, that's about $460,000 of insurance total that's in play here. Does that include their belongings as well?
That is correct.
So really, the 15% is not just part of the replacement cost of the structure. It's actually including their belongings as well. That
is my understanding. I could maybe have legal clarify, but my understanding is that 15% of the payout on a damaged home of 75% more, if it's declared 75% more of a loss, we receive 15% of that payout.
No, it's not part of this today, but I assume these folks, as well as others in the area, have been informed of their opportunity to apply for a year rebate on their
yes, I actually, my recollection is that this member has not yet done that. I actually asked him about that yesterday when I was on the phone, reminded him of that.
You did say that they could remove or fill in. If they pull a permit and they begin construction, would that not be similar to other construction sites around the community at that point?
Exactly. And so the minute I have that permit in place, we will initiate that release because then it would be managed like any other site, exactly as you said, sir. And then also, if, again, at that point, for some reason they were to walk away, I would still have that permit in the contractor, that contractor's insurance, contractor's bond that we could utilize to make the area safe without having to use taxpayers' dollars.
Okay, so if they start the process of again, getting the plans finalized and pull the permit and start construction, we would give them that money back.
Correct.
Because I know they need the money to build the house, obviously, so.
Yes, and actually the contractor right now is on target to probably have his permit about this time next week.
And also, let's clarify that the authority for the county to withhold the 15% is Kansas state law. There's a KSA that creates this.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Do we have to do this, or is that something we just have the authority to do?
Again, I'll defer to legal for specifics, but my understanding has always been that in some form we are obligated to retain those proceeds. We do this for City of Wichita properties as well as unincorporated properties within MABCD.
I've talked to some of these folks. First, let me just extend my sympathy to what they're going through. A lot of folks out there are really suffering still from this tornado that happened back in April and April 29th. Seems like a long time at this point, doesn't it? Anyway, a lot of folks out there are still hurting and a lot of work to be done. And we don't want to be harsh on people by holding their money, but we do want to make sure that the community is left in a safe place. I don't want someone to be walking across the property and fall into a 10-foot deep hole that's maybe not been seen. So at the end of the day, this is important that we take care of property so there's not a hidden danger out there, which is what this is about. So I do want these folks to get their money as quickly as possible, but I do obviously care about making sure it's a safe area. I have no other questions. Unless there's other questions, I would make a motion, Mr. Chairman, we would set the public hearing for September the 7th, 2022.
Please make motion.
I make a motion that we set the public hearing for this dangerous, unsafe structure hearing for September the 7th, 2022.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item M, consideration of a grant in the amount of $426,250 for the BJA fiscal year 2022 Paul Coverdell Forensic Science Improvement Grants Program competitive.
Morning, Dr. Stedman.
Good morning. I am Shelley Stedman, and I serve Sedgwick County as the director of the Regional Forensic Science Center, and I'm here today with 2 agenda items. Both are grants for which the Regional Forensic Science Center wishes to participate for awards that we would realize next year. The first is the Paul Coverdell grant, and annually there are 2 solicitations under the Paul Coverdell grant. One is a formula grant, and the other is a competitive grant. And this agenda item is not about the formula grant, but I wanted to assure you that we are also participating in that grant. That is based on the level of Part 1 crimes that occur in each state. And so Kansas receives a specified amount of money under that formula grant. And we got $218,531. And of that money, I negotiated with the other 2 laboratory systems to use $86,800, which is about 40% of the total. And we're going to use that to pay for the ongoing annual maintenance of our laboratory information management system and to purchase a gas chromatograph that's equipped with a nitrogen phosphorus detection system, which is a GCNPD, and it's used for the detection of certain classes of drugs. It will be used by the toxicology lab. So because that amount was below $100,000, it was approved by the county manager, and we've already compiled all of our information and sent it to the KBI, and then that grant will be managed by the Kansas Governor's Grant Program. So they have yet to submit those documents, but that's the general process for that grant every year. The agenda item today is the competitive grant. So this grant will be considered against all of the others received by laboratories doing forensic work and medical examiner's office across the United States. While I am hopeful that we will receive this money, I'm in no way confident about it, but I'm going to explain to you a little bit of how I emphasized our needs. I noticed in the solicitation that they lean strongly towards using money for accreditation of medical examiners' offices, and although we are already accredited, we have some needs related to maintaining that accreditation. And I'm also going to talk today about Part 1 crime, because that's the other thing that they emphasize in determining who most needs the funding. So as far as the accreditation goes, the gold standard is to complete 90% of autopsy cases in 90 days. And in 2021, our metric was the completion of 40%. So we are very far behind on that. And the root cause of that, again, it still is our toxicology laboratory. It's currently staffed with 7 FTEs. That's a chief toxicologist, a lab manager, and 5 staff scientists. But in 2018 through 2020, we had 1 retirement of the chief toxicologist and 6 resignations. So when you have 100% turnover throughout the course of 3 years, your throughput is going to be severely affected. In addition to that, there's a laboratory technician that helps to assist with processing of samples in the toxicology lab, but the other portion of their time is spent backing up in evidence receiving, where we interact with law enforcement. And over the course of the last 4 years, we've had vacancies in either the lab technician position or the evidence receiving position 4 times. So that, when those people are not able to assist in the tox lab, it further exacerbates the already struggling situation for the staff scientists there. Now, last time I was here, I talked to you about the fact that the number of deaths reported is up 23%. I explained that the number of cases that fall into the coroner's jurisdiction is up 34%, and I talked a little bit about how investigating impaired drivers has been up 13%. So in addition to our staff challenges, our caseload is growing in the toxicology lab. Since the COVERDELL is largely distributed based on Part 1 crimes, I encourage you to talk in your narrative about the level of Part 1 crimes in your jurisdiction. And good or bad, the math is on our side for winning a competitive grant here in Sedgwick County when it comes to Part 1 crimes. And while in the narrative I focused only on the metrics that apply to Sedgwick County, I wanted to talk to you about how things look across the state. So I'm going to give you our numbers in Johnson counties, and knowing that the KBI is the third system, that will give you a good idea of what we encounter, what Johnson County encounters, and what is left for the KBI serving the remaining 103 counties. So as far as population goes, 17% of Kansans live in Sedgwick County. 21% of them live in Johnson County. So there's not a substantial difference in the population. However, the number of Part 1 crimes that occur are happening 31% of the time in Sedgwick County. In Johnson County, they see 14%. If you look at the number of violent crimes, 40% of the violent crime in the state of Kansas occurs in Sedgwick County. In Johnson County, it's 10%. And if you look at the number of murders that happen, 32% of them happen in Sedgwick County. And in Johnson County, it's less than 5%. If you add to that the fact that we provide autopsy services to 20 surrounding counties, and you look at how many homicides that they've submitted to our center for us to process, you can conclude that we encounter about 37% of the murder cases in our medical examiner's office in Sedgwick County. If you look at the resources that are available to us throughout our state, there's about 191 forensic scientists in the state of Kansas, and that's not counting the small satellite labs in Pittsburgh and Kansas City. So it's a pretty conservative number. And of those, 20% of them or so work here in Sedgwick County. If you look at the total amount of lab space that forensic labs have throughout the state, there's about 213 square feet. And we make up 13% of that footprint. So taken together, we're encountering 40% of the violent crime, but we have 20% of the workforce available to deal with it and 13% of the lab space. So I think that definitely demonstrates the need. And I worked on outlining those Part 1 crime metrics and our turnaround time to demonstrate that need. So how can we use this money to improve? Well, this year I partnered with the KDHE and we received $36,000 to start sending out some of our toxicology cases for testing at private laboratories to help expedite the results of that testing. It's been a very successful project so far. And so as part of this grant, I asked for $50,000 a year to continue to be able to do that. And we would like to focus on polydrug overdose cases and suicides because they have a high potential for complexity, but a very low potential for trial adjudication. So we hope that we could use that to clear the backlog so that we can go back to working cases real time as they come in the door. And also to help us work for new instrumentation validation, which is the second part of the request, and give us some time to get our new instrumentation online. So because the project period is 3 years, the total request for outsourcing is $150,000. The other main problem we're facing is that we have an aging equipment infrastructure. We do not have an equipment replacement program, and specifically the toxicology lab uses liquid chromatography tandem mass spec for the quantification and confirmation of drugs and drug metabolites. It's used on all cases. We have 3 of these instruments. They were all purchase used, and they are all impending obsolescence in the next 2 years. In conformance with accreditation standards, once we can no longer have those instruments serviced, they no longer qualify for annual maintenance, and they can no longer undergo proper calibration. We cannot use them on casework. So we're looking at about $750,000 problem in 2023, and that's just to maintain the status quo. I did ask for ARPA funding to start replacing these instruments, and although we were not prioritized, my understanding is we are still in the contingency queue. So to try to get us started on the right track, I have requested $276,250 for the purchase of an LCMS system. And if we do realize that money, that will definitely take some weight off of what will probably be a sizable decision package next year during the budget process. So I'm hoping we can find this grant money to replace that system. So with an outsourcing cost of $150,000 and an instrument cost of $426,250, that brings you to the amount that you see on your agenda today. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Dr. Stedman. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. I have a real quick question. I appreciate all of these stats around the breakdown of the Part 1 crime topic here. I wonder, is there a way to determine what is the percentage of interaction with our court system? I'm not really sure how to ask this question, because it seems like out of all of these cases, so our violent crimes are 40%, 32% of all the murders are in here, and I don't expect you to have the answer right now, but how many pieces of your, okay, my question revolves around how many cases and pieces of drug paraphernalia or the testing that you do, how much of that interacts with our court system?
Well, the vast majority of what we do, we only work criminal cases, so the vast majority of what we do interacts with the court system, and I usually say there's not a lot of cases criminal cases that aren't touched by our facility, but there are a lot of them that, because of the work we do, plea out, and so we don't necessarily become involved in the adjudication of them once our work is done.
Okay, so I'd like to follow up with you about this so that I can formulate my question so that we can understand how important this equipment for sure is, so that we don't slow down our court system. Because to your point, the last time you were here is, I think sometimes we do kind of forget about the Forensic Science Center and how it plays a role in our court system. So the fact that we don't have an equipment replacement program and that we're looking at a $750,000 cost coming up next year, I think is irresponsible. We have a replacement program for every computer that we have, but for the technology that we need in order to move cases through our court system, that's important that we go ahead and allocate resources for that. So how can we talk about getting a replacement program in the works, like our technology review board for all technology, that ensures that Dr. Stedman doesn't have to come back here in next year and say, hey, I need $750,000 for equipment so that I can do my job?
We've had those conversations, and we're working on that. It's in my strategic plan to achieve that. But what I'm here to tell you is the general funds haven't paid for hardly any of the capital equipment that is running at the Regional Forensic Science Center. We rely almost entirely on grants. That's absolutely true in the DNA lab. And I think it's just been an understanding, and we've been very successful with grant money to be able to do that.
So if we're not able to receive a grant for the $750,000 next year, where will that money come from? That's what I'm saying. We need to have some sort of contingency plan so that you can still do your job, so that we can move cases through the court system, so that people aren't stuck in our jail and we're paying for them. It's a trickle effect. And that's important, I think, that we recognize that we need to start figuring out ways to plan for this. That's what budgets are for.
Yeah, it's been recognized, and it's been put in the process prior to the decision packages every year that I've been doing that, since 2016 when I wrote the strategic plan. It's just that until there's a critical need, those things don't generally raise to the level of a decision package.
Well, I think it's important for us to forecast so that we're not waiting until it's critical. And I'm looking, and this isn't a question directed at you, Dr. Stedman. This is looking at Tom and managing our county so that we're diligent with our funds so that we don't have to come back here and have a question of $750,000 to maintain our operations.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rusty, if you want. I'll go ahead and comment. Let me have Rusty have a shot first, then I have a comment for you, Commissioner.
Commissioner, I don't disagree with you at all, and that's the conversation that Dr. Stedman and I have had. I had that conversation with Dr. Rohrig as well, that just as we do with the durable medical equipment with EMS, and that we do with fire trucks, and even with ambulances, the fire trucks, we have a replacement plan. We project out when we think that they're going to go end of life, and then we build that into a forecast. The problem is that we don't have savings accounts for these departments. Our budgets go year to year, and so it's a matter of whether you can put that money into an equipment reserve, which a lot of these instruments are not, I don't think, eligible. And Lindsay's nodding her head in agreement that we don't have a way to take any end-of-year savings that Dr. Stedman might have and put them in a savings account and let them accumulate to replace equipment later down the road. It's coming into a budget development cycle. She's projecting in advance of that what her needs are going to be, and then it's a matter of coming in with a decision package. So the way our system is built up, we do want to have a plan in place, a graph, a table that shows what her end of lives are, what year they're going to go end of life, but right now we just don't have a solid way to build a savings account type funding for that, or for other types of equipment that we have. So we're talking about that, and we look at it continuously, and Tom can expound upon that if he wants to.
And the only thing I'd add to that is Dr. Stedman and Dr. Rohrig before her had very great success, as Shelley has said, applying for and receiving these types of equipment through grants. The answer to your question, if we wouldn't get the grant, we'd have to come to you and do a CIP adjust or some type of adjustment to get Shelley what she needs to operate. We are trying to map out, not just in forensic science, but there's many touches in the organization where we have expensive equipment that we're trying to forecast out, portable radios, and as Rusty mentioned, a lot of fleet vehicles. So we're trying to forecast that out and deal with that through a CIP budget. But in this case, what makes Dr. Stedman's area unique is they've had very great success with these types of grant achievals, whereas in other areas that we're talking about, we don't have the ability necessarily to do that. So your point is well taken. I think it is, we should be strategic about this. I think we should have a plan laid out, but I think we should always try to get these types of grants for this type of operation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Stedman. I do appreciate all the work that you do, and we understand the workload that you've got over there. And I appreciate that you go for these grants. I think it's in the state's best interest to make sure that we continue to receive these grants, because a lot of the things that you're doing really, I think, belong in the state's requirements. We're doing them here locally because we need to if we're going to get it into the court system. So as long as we are taking care of these type of issues and reacting to them here locally, the state should continue to make sure that we get grants in order to be able to support your operation. So I do appreciate you providing the grant request, and I move that we approve the submission of the grant application and authorize the appropriate actions.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item N, consideration of a grant in the amount of $265,084 for the 2022 DNA Capacity Enhancement for Backlog Reduction Program.
Welcome back, Dr. Stedman.
Thank you. For the record, Shelley Stedman, serving Sedgwick County as the Director of the Regional Forensic Science Center, and I am bringing before you a request to put in an application for $265,084 for the DNA Capacity Enhancement for Backlog Reduction Grant. And this is a formula grant, so unlike the last one that's competitive, we don't have any idea whether we'll get that funding. This one is going forward with much more certainty. Again, there's a certain amount of money allocated to the state of Kansas, and the three laboratory systems that conduct forensic biology and DNA testing in the state split it up. That amount was $971,378, and so we're asking for a little under a third of that. Just like toxicology, we use a lot of technology. We use a lot of instrumentation, and unlike some of the other forensic disciplines, we use a great deal of expensive software. And just like before, to keep those instruments in working condition, we have to have annual maintenance. Part of that includes the calibration of those to be sure that they are working properly and accurately. And so the better part of this money is being used to provide that service and maintenance on some of the robotic instrumentation that we obtained under this grant in previous years. We have also asked for a little bit of money to replace some small equipment. We have equipment that is original to the center when it was built in 1995 that we would like to update. We also have not really had the opportunity to address the cost increases that we've been experiencing over the last 2 years. So when I drafted my proposal, I took a handful of things we bought in 2019 and compared the costs to what they were listed for today, and they ranged from increases in the area of 4% up to 93%. So some things like the biohazard sharps containers we use on a daily basis have actually doubled in price. We also had internal promotions when Dr. Roig retired, which created vacancies in the DNA section. I still remain qualified as a DNA analyst, so we have additional staffing. We also moved a drug ID chemist position to DNA because of our backlog. And so we have extra people, and so they require more supplies. So in summary, this grant request is largely for supplies to support ongoing operations and to offset the increased cost of additional personnel, and also to try to address the inflation that we've not yet been able to do so. This grant is something I present every year. The amount's usually in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. And you've been provided all the underlying documents and standard grant assurance, just like years before. So if you have any questions about this one, I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Stedman, for being here today. Can you describe what is the backlog today?
We have about 200 cases.
What's the longest that they've been? What's the longest backlog time period?
We have cases approaching a year. There may be longer. I didn't check on that before I left.
Are there criminal charges pending, waiting for the results of this DNA test?
In some cases, criminal charges would be pending if the cases are unsolved. So if there's a rape case and the suspect is unknown, but a DNA profile is able to be generated and matched to a database sample, that could generate an investigative lead that could result in someone being charged for the crime.
I would assume if there's a rape investigation that those samples would be processed, not in a backlog queue, but they would be processed as a priority. Would that not be?
We prioritize homicides. We put the rapes in order in which they are received unless they're a matter of public safety, and then we'll work 24 hours a day to get them done as soon as possible. But we do work them in the order they were received. Property crimes, they are not prioritized. Usually property crimes, they're simpler crimes. It's a blood sample at a crime scene. And so if we have room in our batch, we will go pull some property crimes. Again, unless we know we have a serial burglar, something like that.
I guess I had it characterized in the past, and I remembered this, that I thought that the nature of this backlog was there were no charges pending as a consequence of the DNA test. In other words, maybe someone collected a sample, but there's no one accused of a crime. There's no one claiming anything happened. There's no charges that would happen as a result of the DNA being tested. So basically, we're just simply clearing the shelves. We're not really expecting any charges to result from the particular DNA test. If there's actual charges out there, I would hope that those would actually be prioritized, not held back and waiting for funding for processing.
I think the confusion is that there was a project years back where we looked at some untested kits that had accumulated over a period of years, and we weren't necessarily expecting for charges to come from those because they were investigated by law enforcement, but determined, for example, in a consensual defense situation where nobody is disagreeing that a sexual encounter occurred. DNA doesn't add to that case. Whether the DNA is there or not, they've agreed it both could be there or should be there. So, however, that work was done by the KBI in Johnson County using some grant funding, and now we receive the priority cases in Wichita that are believed to be most likely to go to court. Some of the others do go to the KBI, and the reason for that prioritization is we're here, we can testify, and historically, we have been as timely. So our situation right now is we did hire 2 people. They have gotten through the training to screen the rape kits that we had in the queue. So the primary work has been done, but now a qualified DNA analyst needs to take those positive results and create DNA profiles, make comparisons, and interpret those. Our main focus, as we recover from the pandemic and the shutdown, is to meet the needs of the district attorney's office. They're prioritizing our cases, and we're working them if they have trials that are scheduled.
Years ago, there was a state law that was being discussed, and I think it actually passed, but you can confirm this if it's true or not. But when someone's arrested and booked into the jail, there is a saliva sample that's taken for DNA CODIS, database purposes, that they would collect a saliva sample for DNA. Is that happening here in Sedgwick County?
Yes, Sedgwick County is the main booking station for collection of DNA samples from offenders in the state of Kansas.
Okay, so are some of these samples, the saliva samples we're talking about, is that what's part of this backlog?
No, all of those cases go to the KBI databasing laboratory because the structure of CODIS is that it is managed at a national level. It is actually owned by the FBI. Each state has a state-level laboratory, which is the KBI in Topeka. And then we have local labs like ourselves, Johnson County, and the satellite labs in Great Bend and Kansas City. We all of the offender samples are collected and barcoded and sent to the KBI. They generate those DNA profiles, and they reside in a offender index of that database, and our crime samples can search against those offenders once we upload those.
Yeah, I remember the debate when that happened. I support the grant application. Oh, this is a grant application, correct? I support the grant application in this case. I think that's totally fine. I am a bit concerned about someone who gets arrested as a citizen who's not been charged with a crime, but they simply booked into jail pending charges, and yet they're collecting DNA samples and populating the national database for DNA. It's, I think the next step in this progression probably would be to collect DNA samples from infants when they're born. But at the end of the day, they have a database that's very broad that has DNA samples on people, even though they may have never been charged with a crime. Once those records are updated with that person's DNA, that's a permanent record of that person, and it's just simply a national effort to collect DNA on anybody who's a bad actor at any time in their lifetime. So,
well, to be clear, it only applies to certain types of crime. So if you're booked into the jail because you're suspected of driving drunk, your DNA sample is not collected and put into the offender database. There are very specific felony and some other crimes that one must qualify before they would be collected.
I have to go back and research the law, but thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions. I was going to ask a question about rape kits, but you've already answered that. So I don't see anything else. I move that we approve the submission of the grant application and authorize the following the appropriate actions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Item O, adoption of the Corrections Worker and Intensive Supervision Officer Compensation Plans.
Good afternoon, Sheena.
Good afternoon. Today I am here to talk about the Corrections Pay Plan. You should have a copy of this at your seats as well. As a reminder, you have received the first or the fourth quarter DOC grant award that was accepted on June 1st. And you can see the amounts a little over $200,000 for adult and $239,000 for juvenile. On July 6th, you will receive a request to accept the corrections grant for fiscal year 23 in the amount of $1,212,616 for adults and $1,196,401 for juvenile. And again, you will see that on the July 6th agenda. Today, what I am asking you to consider is the corrections pay plan, and it will only affect these positions: corrections workers, senior corrections workers, assistant corrections shift supervisors, corrections shift supervisors, and corrections coordinators. In addition, it will involve the intensive supervision officers 1, 2, and 3. And before you see their current pay plan and what we are proposing to go into effect July 1st. For the corrections workers pay plan, that is an 8.52% increase, and for the ISOs, that is a 17% increase. On the June 24th payday, which is this Friday, employees will receive a percentage pay increase on that check. The percentages represent 10% of critical pay, which is currently approved, an 8.53 corrections worker increase, or a 17% for the ISO plan. Again, that's just for that fourth quarter allocation. There's also a 3% adjustment for current employees. This does include all eligible hours from April 1st through June 18th, which is the end of the pay period, which will be reflective on the June 24th payday. On July 1st, the 10% critical pay will end, and corrections workers and ISOs will be able to see their new pay rate, which was reflected in the previous slide, moving forward. And with that, I ask that you accept the corrections pay plan effective for July 1st. And I would stand for any questions.
Well, thanks, Sheena. Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. The only question I really have is around what this does to compression issues. I know we've had those conversations in the past, and I just want to make sure that, as we know that's going to happen, that this isn't just a one-year fix, and that we really will be working continuously to address those issues.
So if you recall, the 3% that we are adding for current employees, we are doing that, again, specific for those classifications to address compression.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Sheena, once again, I want to thank you and your staff and everyone that's worked on this pay plan. We've been talking about it for some time. This has been something that we want to make sure we do it right. And so it's going to be a kind of an ongoing process also. After we do this initial step, there may be some other things that we'll find that due to compression and so forth that we'll have to adjust in the future. But I think we're on the right track, and I appreciate that. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was kind of my point I wanted to make, is that I'm aware that there's some other folks that maybe not be one of these exact positions that may be related to the corrections organization, that I think on a case-by-case basis, or perhaps maybe a little bit more work we have to do some other corrections. I think this is a good step, but I'm concerned that maybe when you move one piece of the puzzle, you might create another piece somewhere else that needs to be adjusted as well. So I want to be very sensitive to anybody out there that feels like they've been unfairly treated by us doing this. We're trying to help a certain part of our organization that definitely needs to be done, but there may be other areas that are going to pop up now and saying we need to be very careful not to leave things as they are, because we're creating dissatisfaction and perhaps some what might be perceived as being very unfair to some of the folks that are ancillary to these positions. And so I want to be very careful with that. So again, I'll support what's been presented today. I think it's a good step, but I'm very concerned about other employees that might feel like we're not quite done yet. So I'll continue to monitor that. I'm sure you will as well, Manager Stoltz.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner, for them comments. One thing that Sheena didn't mention when we were looking at corrections officers specifically, this plan today now brings the corrections workers in line with sheriff detention. And those are, you're exactly correct. Every time you touch a piece of the puzzle, there's other pieces that get impacted. And what we don't want to create in the organization is employees moving back and forth between departments, whoever pays them the most for doing a very similar type of work. And the other point to what has already been mentioned, this is the first of many discussions of compensation that the commission will hear between now and budget adoption. There'll be other plans coming forward, other tweaks coming forward. We do fully intend to discuss the issue of compression. I don't know that that's going to be this budget year, but it has to be on our radar for the future because we have to try to organizationally make sure this is fair to employees and yet be responsible to the people that pay taxes. So we will be having many discussions in the future. We try to message out to employees this is not the end of the discussion, it is the very beginning of the discussion, and we will continue to hash this out over the next several months.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Over the last couple of days, I have received a lot of concerns about compression issues. And so other than saying we're going to work this out over the next couple of years, is that the only response that they're going to get?
No, in the corrections, and I've gotten emails too, Commissioner, and talked with some employees, as has Rusty and as has Sheena and many of you. We are going to take a look at, we've got discussion going with corrections management now on a strategy that could potentially be implemented this year to take care of some compression issues within their supervisory and management staff. That's who's being discussed here. And also the commissioners will, when we have budget discussion and when we come closer to ratifying a budget discussion, a budget, you will look at a meaningful raise for all employees as we continue to dialogue this. So it's not that we're going to just give zero next year. There's an intention to give a meaningful raise to all employees within the county because all employees are living in an 8% inflationary rate right now. So we're going to be addressing that. So there are, I don't think it's years in advance. I think specifically in corrections, if that's who you're talking to, there is a strategy that as soon as this is passed today, we're going to go right back into that discussion. Sheena, Rusty, Lindsay, the leadership team will sit down and we will look at things, strategies that we could possibly implement even this year for those corrections compression issues. So that's as honest as I can be. If the commission approves it or if we feel like we can afford it, we'll do it. If not, it maybe has to go into next year's discussion of budget. But it's not going to just die. We have to talk about this, and we have to course correct this organization's pay system, which, as we've all discussed publicly before, has been years and years in the making. So,
the corrections pay plan that we saw the last time had the max pay listed. Is there a reason why we're not showing it now?
On the pay plan that I presented, it was just showing you what the starting salaries would move to, so that adjustment of 17 and 8.53%.
Because the last spreadsheet that we received that looked like this had two additional columns that had the max pay. So I'm just wondering if there was a reason
I think
why
that was midpoint and max.
Midpoint and max, yeah. That's all.
Was there a reason why it was excluded from this PowerPoint presentation?
We'd gladly provide you and employees with that copy.
Okay. Anna has said that the agenda item has the midpoint and the max provided into it.
I guess my question is there a reason why it wasn't shown to the public in this capacity right now?
No, it was just a simple trying to illustrate what our starting rates were moving from, if, for example, 1782 to 1934. That's all.
Okay.
The range is...
That's a question I got from a constituent, so I'm asking you so that they can hear directly from you. Thank you for answering the question.
And the other reason we wanted to show the starting wage is just to calibrate this. These employees and our sheriff detention employees, a mere year and a half ago, we're making a $15 or $16 an hour starting wage, just shows you the level of impact that the commission is approving these employees to go to. So I think that's why we maybe show starting wage as just a litmus.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Once again, Sheena and your staff, thank you very much for all the hard work you've done on this and all these pay plans. So I make a motion that we adopt the new compensation plans for correction workers and intensive supervision officers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item P, mid-year general pay adjustment.
Oh, Sheena.
I will stay up here. Next, I am going to talk about the mid-year pay adjustments. In our 2022 budget, we had set aside a 2% salary contingency fund. We are set to implement mid-year pay adjustments. Those being impacted are most employees will receive a 2% pay adjustment if they were hired before December 31st of 2021. And those hired after January 1st of 2022 will receive a 1% adjustment. Included in this is also the employees on the sheriff's pay plan will receive a 2% pay adjustment. And not included in the mid-year adjustments are the fire department. They had a 2% in their contingency button that was previously approved for implementation on January 1st. The corrections pay plan employees that you just approved will not be included. Positions not listed on our county pay plan, such as our poll workers and flat rate and court trustee employees. And at this time, elected officials are not included. I would also like to point out on our horizon things that are still being reviewed. The CommCare pay plan. We will also be reviewing emergency communications and looking to implement our fire and EMS step plans. I know there were some questions about things that we are still looking at, but again, depending on how much funding we have available in our budget, we will continue to look at shift pay, holiday pay, weekend pay, and parental leave pay. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Well, thank you again. Thanks to your staff for working on this. It's with inflation where it's at today, it's important that we retain the workers we have now and recruit new ones. So I think this is a step in that direction. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to ask, what's the exact implementation date of the increase?
The exact implementation date will be July 3rd, so they'll see that on their first full paycheck in July.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And this is coming out of contingency that we had available.
That is correct.
So I thank the staff and Lindsay for having the foresight to have contingency here so that we could do this. I don't see any other questions. I make a motion that we approve the mid-year general pay adjustment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you, Sheena. Next item, please.
Item Q, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts regular meeting on June 16th, 2022.
Well, good afternoon, Joe. You found your way over here to this building?
Yes, sir.
Oh, very good.
Had to leave a breadcrumb trail to get back again. But good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director. The regular meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts on June 16th has resulted in two items that we are seeking approval. And the first item is the aggregate ditch lining and light 18-inch stone for riprap for Public Works. And this recommendation is to accept the low bid from Pearson Materials LLC at the rates listed. And this is for a contract period of 2 years with 3 one-year options to renew. Our final item is the 2022 recommended insurance renewals for risk management. And this recommendation is to accept the insurance premium renewals as listed. And that's for an estimated total of $1,814,795.44. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval of both items.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. I don't see any questions. Jim Weber's in the back room. He'll be happy that his ditchers are going to get lined. Well, move to approve boards and bids and contracts.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye.
Thank you,
Joe.
Commissioner. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item.
Consent agenda.
Manager Stoltz.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Tom Stoltz, County Manager's Office, recommend approval of consent items R through AH.
Make a motion to approve Romeo through Alpha Hotel.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Howell. Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. At this time, I'd like to recess the Board of County Commissioners meeting and call into order the governing body of Fire District Number 1. Madam Clerk, next item.
Roll call. Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Lopez.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
We did not have anyone sign up on public agenda. Next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, fire meeting minutes of May 18th, 2022.
All commissioners have reviewed the minutes from May 18th. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Good morning again. Tom Stoltz, County Manager's Office, recommend approval of consent item B for the fire agenda.
Move to approve consent item Bravo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And at this time, I'd like to adjourn the governing body of Fire District Number 1, call back into order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for June 22nd. Madam Clerk, next item.
Legislative issues.
I don't believe we have anything on legislative agenda. Nope. According to Tonya, there's nothing there. Next item, please.
Committee reports.
Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, the chairman and I attended the June 20th board meeting of the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition. I will be giving everyone a copy of our agenda and also our work plan that was presented. We went over the treasurer's report. We had all of our committees and our task force report. We have an initiative that is focused on a transportation pilot that has seen pretty great success, and that transportation pilot will be, a report will be generated and given to us that I will then give to all of you to see. We went over the database. We talked about trying to have a database that is incorporated and will help all providers be able to communicate. Our county legal, Justin Wagner, is working on that for us to make sure that we are HIPAA compliant. We had an update on our workforce concerns, and Chairman, if you'd like to add anything to any of this, please feel free. But we're given an update about the Health and Science Center that met the governance committee. We are trying to make sure that we have a platform that is presented to our state legislature next year. We also talked about a dashboard for an outward-facing dashboard of sorts that will help the community understand what resources are available. We also went over the fentanyl update and how we are working to collaborate and do a cross-platform of getting information out in multiple languages. As I mentioned, we do have a solid work plan that I will be presenting to each one of you. And our next meeting is July the 18th. That's pretty much the general update. If you'd like to add anything, Chairman, I'd be happy to hear your
Certainly. Well, I was very pleased with the progress on the dashboard, so that it allows people that are in need of services to have one place that they could go, and depending on what services, they'll know exactly where they can go to receive those services. So I appreciated that. The other thing is that we did discuss was open meetings. As a result of those discussions, Tim Kaufman has asked Mike Papoon to take a look at the requirements of open meetings to see if this meets the definition of the Kansas open meetings or not. So that is still ongoing. So I appreciate it. Anything else for committee reports today? Seeing nothing, Madam Clerk, next item.
Other.
Other. Any commissioners have anything to cover during other? Commissioner Cruz.
Today at Evergreen, they are having an All of Us presentation, which is a research project designed to collect samples for research purposes when it comes to medication. And I would encourage each person, if you are free, to go to Evergreen Community Center and participate. They will be open, I believe, until 3 or 4 o'clock today, and then tomorrow they're open from 1 to 7, and then Friday as well. So head over to Evergreen and participate if you are able. That's it.
Anything else in the other? Seeing nothing, we have no executive session today. Does any commissioners have anything that needs to come before the commission today? Seeing nothing, we're adjourned. Thank you all for participating.